Okay, so I'm back. It says determining quality. We shall see. Looks good to you, huh? Good to know. I see a green line here now, so maybe it was it. I just had to start and stop it. I'm sorry we didn't do it sooner, guys. Okay, moving on. Good whiskey. Such a bustle ensued that you might have thought a goose the rarest of all birds, a feathered phenomenon to which a black swan was a matter of course, and in truth was something very like it in that house. Mrs. Cratchit made the gravy, ready beforehand in a little saucepan, hissing hot. Master Peter mashed the potatoes with incredible vigor. Miss Belinda sweetened up the applesauce. Martha dusted the hot plates. Bob took Tiny Tim beside him in a tiny corner at the table, and the two young Cratchits set chairs for everybody, not forgetting themselves, and mounting guard upon their posts, crammed spoons into their mouths, lest they should shriek for goose before their turn came to be helped. At last the dishes were set on, and grace was said. It was succeeded by a breathless pause, as Mrs. Cratchit, looking slowly all around the carving knife, prepared to plunge it into the breast. But when she did, and when the long-expected gush of stuffing issued forth, one murmur of delight arose all around the board, and even Tiny Tim, excited by the two young Cratchits, beat on the table with the handle of his knife and feebly cried, "Hurrah!" There never was such a goose. Bob said he didn't believe there ever was such a goose cooked. Its tenderness and flavor, size and cheapness were the themes of universal admiration. Eked out by applesauce and mashed potatoes, it was sufficient dinner for the whole family indeed, as Mrs. Cratchit said with great delight, surveying one small atom of a bone upon the dish. They hadn't ate it all at last. Yet every one had had enough, and the youngest Cratchits in particular were steeped in sage and onion to the eyebrows. But now, the plates being changed by Miss Belinda, Mrs. Cratchit left the room alone, too nervous to bear witness, to take the pudding up and bring it in. Suppose it should not be done enough. Suppose it should break in turning out. Suppose somebody should have got over the wall of the backyard and stolen it while they were merry with the goose, a supposition at which the two young Cratchits became livid. All sorts of horrors were supposed. Hello! A great deal of steam. The pudding was out of the copper. A smell like a washing day. That was the cloth, a smell like an eating-house and a pastry-cook's next door to each other, with a laundress's next door to that. That was the pudding. In half a minute Mrs. Cratchit entered, flushed, but smiling proudly with the pudding, like a speckled cannonball, so hard and firm, blazing in half of half a quartern of ignited brandy, and bed-tight with Christmas holly stuck on the top. Oh, England, you do Christmas so well. I made Christmas pudding for the first time last year, and I loved it. I was the only one who loved it, so I won't be making it this year, sadly. It's quite a bit of work and currency, but boy, did I love it. Oh, a wonderful pudding, Bob Cratchit said, and calmly, too, that he regarded as the greatest success achieved by Mrs. Cratchit since their marriage. Mrs. Cratchit said that now the weight was off her mind, she would confess she had her doubts about the quantity of flour. Everybody had something to say about it, but nobody said or thought it was at all a small pudding for a large family. It would have been flat heresy to do so. Any Cratchit would have blushed to hint at such a thing. But I think the important that it was. At last the dinner was all done, the cloth was cleared, the hearth swept, and the fire made up, the compound in the jug being tasted and considered perfect. Apples and oranges were put upon the table, and a shovelful of chestnuts on the fire. Then all the Cratchit family drew round the hearth in what Bob Cratchit called a circle, meaning half a one, and at Bob Cratchit's elbow stood the family display of glass. 2 tumblers and a custard cup without a handle. These held the hot stuff from the jug, however, as well as golden goblets would have been done, and Bob served it out with beaming looks, while the chestnuts on the fire sputtered and cracked noisily. Then Bob proposed, "Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us," which all the family re-echoed. "God bless us, every one," said Tiny Tim, the last of all. He sat very close to his father's side upon a little stool. Bob held his weathered hand in his, as if he loved the child and wished to keep him by his side, and dreaded that he might be taken from him. "Bert," said Scrooge with an interest he had never felt before, "tell me if Tiny Tim will live." "I see a vacant seat," replied the ghost. "In the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die." "No, no," said Scrooge. "Oh, no, kind spirit, say he will be spared." "If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, none other of my race," returned the ghost, "will find him here. What then? If he be like to die, he had better do it, and decrease the surplus population." Scrooge hung his head to hear his own words quoted by the spirit, and was overcome with penitence and grief. "Man," said the ghost, "if man be in your heart, not adamant, forbear that wicked cant until you have discovered what the surplus is, and where it is. Will you decide what men shall live, what men shall die? It may be that in the sight of heaven you are more worthless and less fit to live than millions like this poor man's child. Oh God, to hear the insect on the leaf pronouncing on the too much life among his hungry brothers in the dust." Scrooge bent before the ghost's rebuke, and trembling cast his eyes upon the ground, but he raised them speedily on hearing his own name. "Mr. Scrooge," said Bob, "I'll give you, Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast." "The founder of the feast, indeed!" cried Mrs. Cratchit, reddening. "I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast upon, and I hope I'd have a good appetite for it." "My dear," said Bob, "the children, Christmas Day." "It should be Christmas Day, I am sure," said she, "on which one drinks the health of such an odious, stingy, hard, unfeeling man as Mr. Scrooge. You know he is, Robert. Nobody knows it better than you do, poor fellow." "My dear," was Bob's mild answer, "Christmas Day." "I'll drink to his health for your sake and the day's," said Mrs. Cratchit. "Not for his. Long life to him, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. He'll be very merry and happy, I have no doubt." The children drank the toast after her. It was the first of their proceedings which had no heartiness. Tiny Tim drank it last of all, but he didn't care twopence for it. Scrooge was the ogre of the family. The mention of his name cast a dark shadow on the party, which was not dispelled for full 5 minutes. After it had passed away, they were 10 times merrier than before from the mere relief of Scrooge the baleful being done with. Bob Cratchit told them how he had a situation in his eye for Master Peter, which would bring in, if obtained, full 5 and 6 weekly. The 2 young Cratchits laughed tremendously at the idea of Peter's being a man of business, and Peter himself looked thoughtfully at the fire from between his collars, as if he were deliberating what particular investments he should favor when he came into the receipt of that bewildering income. Martha, who was a poor apprentice at a milliner's, then told them what kind of work she had to do, and how many hours she worked at a stretch, and how she meant to lie abed tomorrow morning for a good long rest, tomorrow being a holiday she passed at home, and how she had seen a countess and a lord some days before, and how the lord was much about as tall as Peter's, at which Peter pulled up his collar so high that you couldn't have seen his head if it had been there. All this time the chestnuts and the jug went round, and by they had a song about a lost child travelling in the snow, from Tiny Tim, who had a plaintive little voice and sang it very well indeed. There was nothing of high mark in this. They were not a handsome family. They were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from being waterproof. Their clothes were scanty, and Peter might have known, and very likely did, the inside of a pawnbroker's. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time, and when they faded and looked happier yet in the bright sprinklings of the spirit's torch at parting, Scrooge had his eye upon them, and especially on Tiny Tim, until the last. By this time it was getting dark, and snowing pretty heavily, and as Scrooge and the spirit went along the streets, the brightness of the roaring fires in kitchens, parlors, and all sorts of rooms was wonderful. Here the flickering of the blaze showed preparations for a cozy dinner, with hot plates baking through and through before the fire, and deep red curtains ready to be drawn to shut out cold and darkness. There all the children of the house were running out into the snow to meet their married sisters, brothers, cousins, uncles, aunts, and be the first to greet them. Here again were shadows on the window blind of guests assembling, and there a group of handsome girls, all hooded and fur-booted and chattering at once, tripped lightly off to some near neighbor's house, where woe upon the single man who saw them enter, artful witches! Well, they knew it in a glow. Doing it all at once. But if you had judged from the numbers of people on their way to friendly gatherings, you might have thought that no one was at home to give them welcome when they got there, instead of every house expecting company and piling up its fires half chimney high. Blessing on it how the ghost exulted. It was bared its breadth of breast, and opened its capacious palm, and floated on, outpouring with a generous hand its bright and harmless mirth on everything within its reach. The very lamplighter who ran on before, dotting the dusky street with specks of light, and who was dressed to spend the evening somewhere, laughed out loudly as the spirit passed, though little kenned the lamplighter that he had any company but Christmas. And now, without a word of warning from the ghost, they stood upon a bleak and desert moor, where monstrous masses of rude stone were cast about, as though it were the burial place of giants, and water spread itself wherever it listed, or would have done so but for the frost that held it prisoner, and nothing grew but moss and furze, and coarse rank grass. Down in the west the setting sun had left a streak of fiery red, which glared upon the desolation for an instant like a sullen eye, and frowning lower, lower, lower yet, was lost in the thick gloom of darkest night. "What place is this?" asked Scrooge. "Place where miners live, who labor in the bowels of the earth," returned the spirit. "But they know me. See." A light shone from the window of a hut, and swiftly they advanced towards it, passing through the wall of mud and snow, and they found a cheerful company assembled round a glowing fire, an old man and woman with their children and their children's children, and another generation beyond that, all decked out gaily in their holiday attire. The old man, in a voice that seldom rose above the howling of the wind upon the barren waste, was singing them a Christmas song. It had been a very old song when he was a boy, and from time to time they all joined in the chorus, so surely as they raised their voices, the old man got quiet, blithe, and loud. The old man got quite blithe and loud, and so surely as they stopped, his vigor sank again. The spirit did not tarry here, but bade Scrooge hold his robe, and passing on above the moor, sped whither? Not to see. To see? To Scrooge's horror, looking back, he saw the last of the land, a frightful range of rocks behind them, and his ears were deafened by the thundering of water as it rolled and roared and raged among the dreadful caverns it had worn, and fiercely tried to undermine the earth, built upon a dismal reef of sunken rocks some league or so from shore, on which the waters chafed and dashed. The wild year through there stood a solitary lighthouse. Great heaps of seaweed clung to its base, and storm birds, born of the wind, one might suppose, as seaweed of the water, rose and fell about it like the waves they skimmed. But even here 2 men who watched the light and had made a fire, that through the loophole in the thick stone wall shed out a ray of brightness on the awful sea. Joining their horny hands over the rough table at which they sat, they wished each other Merry Christmas in their can of grog, and one of them, the elder too, with his face all damaged and scarred with hard weather, as the figurehead of an old ship might be, struck up a sturdy song that was like a gale in itself. Again the ghost sped on above the black and heaving sea, on, until being far away, as he told Scrooge, from any shore, they lighted on a ship. They stood beside the helmsman at the wheel, the lookout in the bow, the officers who had the watch, dark, ghostly figures in their several stations, but every man among them hummed a Christmas tune, or had a Christmas thought, or spoke below his breath to his companion of some bygone Christmas day, with homeward hopes belonging to it. And every man on board, waking or sleeping, good or bad, had had a kinder word for another on that day than on any other day in the year, and had shared to some extent its festivities, and had remembered those he cared for at a distance, and had known that they delighted to remember him. I'll throw in a log on it. It's the exposure is set in such a way that you can't see, but it is a raging hot bed of coals. We'll put a log on it, and it will immediately ignite. Hold a moment. so hot. Oh, my God. Oh, brutally hot down there. Almost hot enough to forage, I would say. Hydration. Oh, it doesn't need any kindling. No. Throw dry wood on that bed of coal. I mean, again, it's below the exposure level of the camera right now, but you can see it's flaring up right now. Dry wood on those coals are we're going to go up in a second. At this point, it's hot enough I could stack it in any order I want. I could just throw piles of wood on it. It would telling you could work metal on it. That's very, very hot. You spent all day in front of a forge? I used to do that. I was a blacksmith in an old tiny town. I was one of the blacksmiths. I was an apprentice blacksmith at Lair State Park in New Jersey. I made nails and occasionally knives when no one was looking, or I tried to. Poorly. If I take off the sweater, you will see my hideous gut. So I'm going to keep the sweater on. I like layers. Yeah, actually, just quickly, I had a family friend who was a farrier, and my dad was in the horse business a bit, and so I actually, having taken up blacksmithing, briefly considered becoming a farrier, but I decided against it. Well, thanks, Morrison. That really helps. Back to the book. And every man on board, waking or sleeping, good or bad, had had a kinder word for another on that day than on any day in the year, and had shared to some extent in its festivities, and had remembered those he cared for at a distance, and had known that they delighted to remember him. It was a great surprise to Scrooge, while listening to the moaning of the wind and thinking what a solemn thing it was to move on through the lonely darkness over an unknown abyss whose depths were secrets as profound as death. It was a great surprise to Scrooge, while thus engaged, to hear a hearty laugh. It was a much greater surprise to Scrooge to recognize it as his own nephew's, and to find himself in a bright, dry, gleaming room, with the Spirit standing smiling by his side and looking at that same nephew with approving affability. I'm trying to remember the voice I gave him. It was kind of foppish. Ha ha! Laughed Scrooge's nephew. Ha ha ha! Ha ha ha! Laughed Scrooge's nephew. If you should happen, by any unlikely chance, to know a man more blessed in a laugh than Scrooge's nephew, all I can say is, I should like to know him too. Introduce him to me, and I'll cultivate his acquaintance. Oh, so it's a big laugh. Okay, well, I can't really do a big laugh right now because the missus is trying to sleep. I told you my fire would be raging at a moment's notice. An fair, even-handed, noble adjustment of things, that while there is infection and disease and sorrow, there is nothing in the world so irresistibly contagious as laughter and good humor. When Scrooge's nephew laughed in this way, holding his sides, rolling his head, and twisting his face in the most extravagant contortions, Scrooge's niece, by marriage, laughed as heartily as he, and their assembled friends, being not a bit behindhand, roared out lustily. He said that Christmas was a humbug as I live, cried Scrooge's nephew, and he believed it too. More shame for him, Fred, said Scrooge's niece indignantly. Bless those women. They never do anything by halves. They are always in earnest. She was very pretty, exceedingly pretty, with dimpled, surprised-looking capital face, a ripe little mouth that seemed to be made to be kissed, as no doubt it was, all kinds of good little dots about her chin that melted into one another when she laughed, and the sunniest pair of eyes you ever saw in any little creature's head. Altogether, she was what you would have called provoking, you know, but satisfactory, too. Oh, perfectly satisfactory. He's a comical old fellow, said Scrooge's nephew. That's the truth. and not so pleasant as he might be. However, his offences carry their own punishment, and I have nothing to say against him. I'm sure he is very rich, Fred, hinted Scrooge's niece. At least you always tell me so. What of it, my dear? Said Scrooge's nephew. His wealth is of no use to him. He don't do any good with it. He don't make himself comfortable with it. He hasn't the satisfaction of thinking that he is ever going to benefit us with it. I have no patience with him, observed Scrooge's niece. Scrooge's niece's sisters and all the other ladies expressed the same opinion. Oh, I have, said Scrooge's nephew. I am sorry for him. I couldn't be angry with him if I tried. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself always here. He takes it into his head to dislike us, and he won't come to dine with us. What's the consequence? He don't lose much of a dinner. Indeed, I think he loses a very good dinner, interrupted Scrooge's niece. Everybody else said the same, and they must be allowed to have been competent judges because they had just had dinner, and with the dessert upon the table were clustered around the fire by lamplight. Well, I'm very glad to hear it, said Scrooge's nephew, because I haven't great faith in these young housekeepers. What do you say, Topper? Topper had clearly got his eye upon one of Scrooge's niece's sisters, for he answered that a bachelor was a wretched outcast who has no right to express an opinion on the subject, whereat Scrooge's niece's sister, the plump one with the lace tucker, not the one with the roses, blushed. Do go on, Fred, said Scrooge's niece, clapping her hands. He never finishes what he begins to say. He is such a ridiculous fellow. Scrooge's nephew revelled in another laugh, and it was impossible to keep the infection off, though the plump sister tried hard to do it with aromatic vinegar. What? His example was unanimously followed. I was only going to say, said Scrooge's nephew, that the consequences of his taking to his likeness and not making merry with us is, as I think, that he loses some pleasant moments which could do him no harm. I am sure he loses a pleasanter companions than he can find in his own thoughts, either in his mouldy old office or his dusty chambers. I mean to give him the same chance every year, whether he likes it or not, for I pity him. He may rail at Christmas till he dies, but he can't help thinking better of it. I defy him. If he finds me going there in good temper year after year and say, Uncle Scrooge, how are you? If it only puts him in the vein to leave his poor clerk £50, that's something. And I think I shook him yesterday. It was their turn to laugh now at the notion of his shaking Scrooge, but being thoroughly good-natured and not much caring what they laughed at, so that they laughed at any rate, he encouraged them in their merriment and passed the bottle joyously. After tea they had some music, for they were a musical family, and knew what they were about when they sung glee or catch. I can assure you, especially Topper, who could growl away the bass like a good one, and never swell the large veins in his forehead or get red in the face over it. Scrooge's niece played well upon the harp, and played among other tunes a simple little air, a mere nothing, you might learn to whistle it in 2 minutes, which had been familiar to the child who fetched Scrooge from boarding school, as he had been reminded by the ghost of Christmas past. When this strain of music sounded, and all the things the ghost had shown him came upon his mind, he softened more and more, and thought that if he could have listened to it often years ago, he might have cultivated the kindness of life for his own happiness with his own hands, without resorting to the sexton's spade that buried Jacob Marley. But they didn't devote the whole evening to music. After a while they played at forfeits, for it is good to be children sometimes, and never better than at Christmas, when its mighty founder was a child himself. Stop! There was a first game at Blind Man's Buff. Of course there was, and I no more believe Topper was really blind than I believe he had eyes in his boots. My opinion is that it was a done thing between him and Scrooge's nephew, that the ghost of Christmas present knew it. The way he went after that plump sister and the lace tucker was an outrage on the credulity of human nature, knocking down the fire irons, tumbling over the chairs, bumping against the piano, smothering himself amongst the curtains. Wherever she went, there went he. He always knew where the plump sister was. He wouldn't catch anybody else. If you had fallen up against him, as some of them did, on purpose, he would have made a feint of endowering to seize you. which would have been an affront to your understanding and would instantly have sidled off in the direction of that plump sister. She often cried out that it wasn't fair, and it really was not, but when at last he caught her, when in spite of all her silken rustlings and her rapid flutterings past him, he got her into a corner whence there was no escape, and his conduct was the most exacerbable. Then his conduct was the most exacerbable, for his pretending not to know her, his pretending that it was necessary to touch her headdress, and further to assure himself of her identity by pressing a certain ring upon her finger and a certain chain about her neck, was vile, monstrous. No doubt she told him her opinion of it, and when another blind man being in office, they were so very confidential together behind the curtains. You guys following that? Played a game where he's blindfolded, and he kept going after the same girl, and then when it was somebody else's turn to be blindfolded, those two disappeared behind some curtains. Hello. Oh, God. Ink and teeth, I'd kill for some warm scones, too. As it happens, I have some English toffee from Trader Joe's, but I fear that if I eat it, I won't be able to read. It sticks in my teeth. But perhaps after the stream. Scrooge's niece was not one of the blind men's buff party. Blind as a man buff is a game where you blindfold somebody and they feel their way around the room looking for things or people. I guess there could be different rules, and in this case, this guy just wanted to find the sister. Scrooge's niece was not one of the blind man's buff party, but was made comfortable with a large chair and a footstool in a snug corner where the ghost and Scrooge were close behind her, but she joined in the forfeits and loved her. Forfeits is another game. Joined in the forfeits and loved her love to admiration with all the letters of the alphabet. Oh, to love your love to admiration was a game that was played. It was like an alphabet game. So, and loved her love to admiration with all the letters of the alphabet. Likewise, at the game of how, when, and where, she was very great, and to the secret joy of Scrooge's nephew, beat her sisters hollow, though they were sharp girls too, as Topper could have told you. There might have been 20 people there, young and old, but they all played, and so did Scrooge, wholly forgetting in the interest he had in what was going on, that his voice made no sound in their ears. He sometimes came out with his guess quite loud, and very often guessed quite right, too, for the sharpest needle, best Whitechapel, warranted not to cut in the eye, was not sharper than Scrooge, blunt as he took it in his head to be. The ghost was greatly pleased to find him in this mood, and looked upon him with such favor that he begged like a boy to be allowed to stay until the guests departed. But this spirit said he could not be done. "Here's a new game," said Scrooge. "1 half-hour, spirit, only one." It was a game called Yes and No, where Scrooge's nephew had to think of something, and the rest must find out what. He only answering to their questions yes or no, as the case was. The brisk fire of questioning to which he was exposed elicited from him that he was thinking of an animal, a live animal, a rather disagreeable animal, a savage animal, an animal that growled and grunted sometimes, and talked sometimes, and lived in London, and walked about the streets, and wasn't made a show of, and wasn't led by anybody, and didn't live in a menagerie, and was never killed in a market, and was not a horse, or an ass, or a cow, or a bull, or a tiger, or a dog, or a pig, or a cat, or a bear. At every fresh question that was put to him, this nephew burst into a fresh roar of laughter, and was so inexpressibly tickled that he obliged to get up off the sofa, stamp. At last the plump sister, falling into a similar state, cried out, "I have found it! I know what it is, Fred! I know what it is!" "What is it?" cried Fred. "It's your Uncle Scrooge!" Which it certainly was. Admiration was the universal sentiment, though some objected that the reply to "Is it a bear?" ought to have been yes, inasmuch an answer in the negative was sufficient to have diverted their thoughts from Mr. Scrooge, supposing they had ever any tendency that way. He has given us much merriment, I'm sure," said Fred, "and it would be ungrateful not to drink his health. Here is a glass of mulled wine ready to our hand at the moment, and I say, Uncle Scrooge." "Well, Uncle Scrooge," they cried. "A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to the old man, wherever he is," said Scrooge's nephew. "He wouldn't take it from me, but he may have it nevertheless. Uncle Scrooge. Uncle Scrooge had imperceptibly become so gay and light of heart that he would have pledged the unconscious company in return and thanked them in an inaudible speech if the ghost had given him time. But the whole scene passed off in the breath of the last words spoken by the nephew, and he and the spirit were again upon their travels. Much they saw, and far they went, and many homes they visited, but always with a happy end. The spirits stood beside sick beds, and they were cheerful. On foreign lands, and they were close at home. By struggling men, and they were patient in their greater hope. By poverty, and it was rich. In almshouse, hospital, and jail, in misery's every refuge, where vain man in his little brief authority had not made fast the door and barred the spirit out, he left his blessing, and taught Scrooge his precepts. It was a long night, if it were only a night, but Scrooge had his doubts of this, because the Christmas holidays appeared to be condensed into the space of time they passed together. It was strange, too, that while Scrooge remained unaltered in his outward form, the ghost grew older, clearly older. Scrooge had observed this change, but never spoke of it until they left the children's 12th night party, when, looking at the spirit as they stood together in an open place, he noticed that its hair was gray. "Are spirits' lives short?" asked Scrooge. "My life upon this globe is very brief," replied the ghosts. "It ends tonight." "Tonight!" cried Scrooge. "Tonight at midnight. Hark! The time is drawing near." The chimes were ringing, 11:15 at that moment. "Forgive me if I am not justified in what I ask," said Scrooge, looking intently at the spirit's robe, "but I see something strange and not belonging to yourself protruding from your skirts. Is that a foot or a claw?" "It might be a claw. It might be a claw, for the flesh there is upon it," was the spirit's sorrowful reply. "Look here." From the foldings of its robe it brought 2 children, wretched, abject, frightful, hideous, miserable. They knelt down at its feet and clung upon the outside of its garment. "Oh, man, look here, look down here!" exclaimed the ghost. They were a boy and a girl, yellow, meager, ragged, scowling, wolfish, but prostrate, too, in their humility, where graceful youth should have filled their features out and touched them with its freshest tints. A stale and shriveled hand, like that of age, had pinched and twisted them and pulled them into shreds. Where angels might have sat enthroned, devils lurked and glared out menacingly. No change, no degradation, no preservation of humanity in any grade. Through all the mysteries of wonderful creation has monsters half so horrible and dread. Scrooge started back, appalled, having them shown to him in this way. He tried to say they were fine children, but the words choked themselves, rather than be parties to a lie of such enormous magnitude. "Spirit, are they yours?" Scrooge could say no more. "They are man's," said the spirit, looking down upon them, "and they cling to me, appealing from their fathers. This boy is ignorance, and this girl is want. Beware them both, in all of their degree, but most of all beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased." "Deny it," cried the spirit, stretching out its hand towards the city. "Slander those who tell it ye, and admit it for your fascist purposes, and make it worse. Abide it the end. And abide the end." "Have they no refuge or resource?" cried Scrooge. "Are there no prisons?" said the spirit, turning on him for the last time with his own words. "Are there no workhouses?" The bell struck 12. Scrooge looked about him for the ghost, and saw it not. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and lifting up his eyes, beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him. A brief pause. I don't think we're going to the Be Right Back video. I just want a sip of water, rest my throat. Sorry, my voices keep shifting. I am a poor man's excuse for a voice actor. I'd say the fire needs no more wood. Boy, does dry wood make a difference. The Blink says, Major Brown butter fat washed rum, and it was amazing. A bottle of it has made it into all my outgoing Christmas baskets, so thanks for that. The Blink, I wish I was on your Christmas list. That's wonderful. So I've never read this book, actually, and there are big pieces of it that I'm surprised I've never. I don't know. I've only ever seen the films. Oh, really? That's interesting to know. Lovely, Love Technique. Great name, Love Technique. Yeah, that's some powerful stuff, right? I will not be putting another log on that fire. Redbreast is some fucking great whiskey. Mm. That's a great question, actually. I never considered that I would be reading books live before. Last year I wanted to do this, and I just thought it was funny. I kind of literally, I mean, just like as a Yule log thing. But I guess it could make this some kind of like a monthly event. It is. It's not that hard. I don't know if I'll always be sitting by the fire. It's brutally hot. Not gonna lie. You have to tonight. I mean, it's the deal. Oh, thank you, Ink and Teeth. Oh, really? Did you try my original eggnog, the shaken one with the maraschino? I love that one. Well, hey, if you want to see the rest of this or if you want to replay it, it will wind up on the H2D2 channel, which there should be a link on one side of my stream page somewhere down there. I just put it in the other day. Yeah, Carol would be fun. It has to be public domain, I think. I mean, it probably doesn't have to be. Oh, you know what? I feel like this should come forward a bit, maybe. Ah, a bit better. I'm a little less shadowed now, a little bit more fill. There's a big softbox hanging over my head. Um, yeah, we could do Alice in Wonderland. I actually, when I was in high school, I read an annotated version of that. It was really interesting. Kind of broke down like all the really esoteric math jokes that were in it and everything. It was cool. It was cool. My only complaint is that this lighting arrangement now makes me look a little bit bald, but you know, we'll make do. We'll make do. I'm a vain man. I don't think it was acid. I don't think it was acid. I don't know. I don't know. I was in high school, long time ago. Ooh, Treasure Island. Now that's a good book. I could do that one. It's a short read too. Yeah, I don't. Also, this is the other thing too. I don't know that we'll be doing. I'm doing this one in one session. I don't know that other books will be done in a single session. It's a bit. Ooh, Poe. Oh my God, you guys are brilliant. I never thought that reading. You know what? Yeah, maybe we'll make this like a thing. How many people are watching? 71. That's respectable. Respectable. Poe would be Halloween, for the most part, yes. Do the Raven, Cask of Amontillado. Could probably get away with some Lovecraft too, actually. A lot of his stuff has fallen into public. Most of everything Lovecraft wrote is probably in public domain for a couple of reasons. No, we have at least one more chapter to go, but we're nearing the end. We're up to the third ghost. I'm just taking a breather to enjoy some whiskey. Mike Crow's got a hell of a voice. But did he do it cold? Did he do it cold? I didn't rehearse this. I know I am glad I found something like this, not feeling too well, and this is just what I needed to help me relax. Well, Candy, wife 4, I am glad to hear it. Sure, Andrew. Yeah, we could do Oz. I've never read Oz. That'd be interesting. Should we continue? Stave 4, the last of the spirits. The phantom. Oh, am I shadowing myself that way? If I hold it down here, this might even be more comfortable. Well, it's tricky to figure out where my eyeline should be, or should the book be in the page? It doesn't matter. In the view. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the very air through which this spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment, which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. But for this it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night and separate it from the darkness by which it was surrounded. We're up to the third ghost, Crimson. He felt that it was tall and stately when it came beside him, and that its mysterious presence filled him with a solemn dread. He knew no more, for the spirit neither spoke nor moved. I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come, said Scrooge. The spirit answered not, but pointed onward with its hand. You are about to show me shadows of the things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us, Scrooge pursued. Is that so, Spirit? The upper portion of the garment was contracted for an instant in its folds, as if the spirit had inclined its head. That was the only answer he received. Although well used to ghostly company by this time, Scrooge feared the silent shape so much that his legs trembled beneath him, and he found that he could hardly stand when he prepared to follow it. Not a well typeset book, honestly. He put one word from a sentence on the second page. Should have made, or whatever. The spirit paused a moment as observing his condition and giving him time to recover. But Scrooge was all the worse for this. It thrilled him with a vague, uncertain horror to know that behind the dusky shroud there were ghostly eyes intently fixed upon him, while he, though he stretched his own to the utmost, could see nothing but a spectral hand and one great heap of black. "Ghosts of the future!" he exclaimed. "I fear you more than any spectre I have seen, but as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear you company, and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me?" It gave him no reply. The hand was pointed straight before them. "Lead on," said Scrooge. "Lead on. The night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me, I know. Lead on, spirit." The phantom moved away as it had come towards him. Scrooge followed in the shadow of its dress, which bore him up, he thought, and carried him along. They scarcely seemed to enter the city, for the city rather seemed to spring up about them and encompass them of its own act. But there they were in the heart of it, on 'change amongst the merchants, who hurried up and down and chinked the money in their pockets, and conversed in groups, and looked at their watches, and trifled thoughtfully with their great gold seals, and so forth, and Scrooge had seen them often. On 'change, as in on the exchange, where the trading and merchants are. The spirit stopped beside one little knot of businessmen. Observing that the hand was pointed to them, Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk. "Oh," said a great fat man with a monstrous chin, "I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead." "When did he die?" inquired another. "Last night, I believe." "Why, what was the matter with him?" asked the third, asking a vast taking a vast quantity of snuff out of a very large snuff box. "I thought he'd never die."
"God knows,"
said the first with a yawn. "What has he done with his money?" asked a red-faced gentleman with a pendulous excrescence on the end of his nose. Ugh, that shook like the gills of a turkey cock. He's got snot hanging out of his nose. Disgusting. Well, we had an old-fashioned earlier made with bourbon, 4 rows single barrel, and this is just a redbreast neat and polishing off the bottle. Taking tiny kisses of it, trying to make it last.
"I haven't heard," said the man with the large chin, yawning again. "Left it to his company, perhaps. He hasn't left it to me. That's all I know."
This pleasantry was received with a general laugh.
"It's likely to be a very cheap funeral," said the same speaker, "for upon my life I don't know of anybody to go to it. Suppose we make up a party and volunteer."
"I don't mind going if lunch is provided," observed the gentleman with the excrescence on his nose, "but I must be fed if I make one." Another laugh.
"Well, I am the most disinterested among you, after all," said the first speaker, "for I never wear black gloves, and I never eat lunch, but I'll offer to go, if anybody else will. When I come to think of it, I'm not at all sure I wasn't his most particular friend, for we used to stop and speak whenever we met. Bye-bye."
Speakers and listeners strolled away and mixed with other groups. Scrooge knew the man, and looked towards the spirit for an explanation. The phantom glided onto a street. Its finger pointed to 2 persons meeting. Scrooge listened again, thinking that the explanation might lie there. He knew these men also, perfectly. They were men of business, very wealthy, and of great importance. He had made a point always of standing well in their esteem, in a business point of view, that is, strictly in a business point of view.
"How are you?"
said one.
"How are you?" returned the other. "Well," said the first, "Old Scratch has got his own at last, eh?" "So I am told," returned the second. "Cold, isn't it? Seasonable for Christmas time. You're not a skater, I suppose?" "No. Something else to think of. Good morning."
Not another word. That was their meeting, their conversation, and their parting. Scrooge was at first inclined to be surprised that the spirit should attach importance to the conversations apparently so trivial, but feeling assured that they must have some hidden purpose, he set himself to consider what it was likely to be. They could scarcely be supposed to have any bearing on the death of Jacob, his old partner, for that was past, and this ghost's province was the future. Nor could he think of any one immediately connected with himself to whom he could apply them. But nothing doubting that to whomsoever they applied, they had some latent moral for his own improvement, he resolved to treasure up every word he heard, and everything he saw, and especially to observe the shadow of himself when it appeared, for he had an expectation that the conduct of his future self would give him the clue he missed, and would render the solution of these riddles easy. He looked about in that very place for his own image, but another man stood in his accustomed corner, and though the clock pointed to its usual time of day for being there, he saw no likeness of himself among the multitudes that poured in through the porch. It gave him little surprise, however, for he had been revolving in his mind a change of life, and hoped he saw his new-born resolutions carried out in this. Quiet and dark beside him stood the phantom, with its outstretched hand. When he roused himself from his thoughtful quest, he fancied, from the turn of the hand, and its situation in reference to himself, that the unseen eyes were looking at him keenly. It made him shudder, and feel very cold. They left the busy scene, and went into an obscure part of the town, where Scrooge had never penetrated before, although he recognized its situation and its bad repute. The ways were foul. Am I blocking the light? The ways were foul and narrow, the shops and houses wretched, the people half naked, drunken, slipshod, ugly, alleys and archways like so many cesspools disgorged their offences of smell and dirt and life upon the straggling streets, and the whole quarter reeked with crime, with filth and misery. Far in this den of infamous resort there was a low-browed beetling shop. There was a low-browed beetling shop, below a penthouse roof, where iron, old rags, bottles, bones, and greasy offal were bought. Upon the floor within were piled up heaps of rusty keys, nails, chains, hinges, files, scales, weights, and refuse, iron of all kinds. Secrets that few would like to scrutinize were bred and hidden in mountains of unseemly rags, masses of corrupted fat and sepulchres of bones. Sitting in among the wares he dealt in by a charcoal stove made of bricks was a grey-haired rascal, nearly 70 years of age, who had screened himself from the cold air without by a frowsy curtaining of miscellaneous tatters hung upon a line, and smoked his pipe in all the luxury of calm retirement. Scrooge and the Phantom came into the presence of this man just as a woman with a heavy bundle slunk into the shop, but she had scarcely entered when another woman, similarly laden, came in too, and she was closely followed by a man in faded black, who was no less startled by the sight of them than they had been upon the recognition of each other. After a short period of blank astonishment in which the old man with the pipe had joined them, they all three burst into a laugh.
"Let the charwoman alone to be the first," cried she who had entered first.
Sorry, I'll do that again.
"Let the charwoman alone to be the first," cried she who entered first. "Let the laundress alone to be the second, and let the undertaker's man alone to be the third. Look here, old Joe, here's a chance, if we haven't all three met here without meaning it." "You couldn't have met in a better place," said old Joe, removing his pipe from his mouth. "Come into the parlor. You were made free of it long ago, you know, and the other two ain't strangers. Stop till I shut the door of the shop. Ah, how it squeaks! There ain't such a rusty bit of metal in the place as its own hinges, I believe, and I'm sure there's no such old bones here as mine. We're all suitable to our calling. We're well matched. Come into the parlor. Come into the parlor."
The parlor was the space behind the screen of rags. The old man raked the fire together with his old stair-rod, and having trimmed the smoky lamp, for it was night, with the stem of his pipe, put it in his mouth again. While he did this, the woman who had already spoken threw her bundle on the floor, and sat down in a flaunting manner on a stool, crossing her elbows on her knees, and looking with bold defiance at the other two.
"What odds, then? What odds, Mrs. Dilber?" said the woman. Every person has a right to take care of themselves. He always did." "That's true indeed," said the laundress. "No man more so." "Why then, don't stand staring. Why then, don't stand staring as if you was afraid, woman. Who's the wiser? We're not going to pick holes in each other's coats, I suppose." "No, indeed," said Mrs. Dilber and the man together. "We should hope not." "Very well, then," cried the woman. "That's enough. Who's the worse for the loss of a few things like these? Not a dead man, I suppose." "No, indeed," said Mrs. Dilber, laughing. "If he wanted to keep him after he's dead, a wicked old screw," pursued the woman, "why hasn't he natural in his lifetime? If he had been, he'd have somebody to look after him when he was struck by death, instead of lying gasping out his last there alone by himself." "It's the truest word you ever spoke," said Mrs. Dilber. "It's a judgment on him." "I wish it was a little heavier a judgment," replied the woman, "and it should have been. You may depend upon it. If I could have laid my hands on anything else, open that bundle, old Joe, and let me know the value of it. Speak out plain. I'm not afraid to be the first, nor afraid for them to see it. We knew pretty well that we were helping ourselves before we met here, I believe. It's no sin. Open the bundle, Joe." But the gallantry of her friends would not allow of this, and the man in folded black mounted the breech first, produced his plunder. It was not extensive. A seal or two, a pencil case, a pair of sleeve buttons, and a brooch of no great value were all. They were severally examined and praised by old Joe, who chalked the sums he was disposed to give for each upon the wall, and added them up into a total when he found there was nothing more to come. "That's your account," said Joe, "and I wouldn't give another sixpence if I was to be boiled for not doing it. Who's next?" Mrs. Dilber was next. Sheets and towels, a little wearing apparel, 2 old-fashioned silver teaspoons, a pair of silver tongs, and a few boots. Her account was stated on the wall in the same manner. "I always give too much to ladies. It's a weakness of mine, and that's the way I ruin myself," said old Joe. "That's your account." If you asked me for another penny and made it an opening question, I'd repent of being so liberal and knock off half a crown. And now on to my bundle. Joe, said the first woman. Joe went down on his knees for the greater convenience of opening it, and having unfastened a great many nuts, dragged out a large and heavy roll of some dark stuff. What do you call this? Said Joe. Bed curtains. Ah, returned the woman, laughing and leaning forward on her cross arms. Bed curtains. You don't mean to say you took 'em down, rings and all, with him lying there, said Joe. Yes, I do, replied the woman. Why not? You were born to make your fortune, said Joe, and you'll certainly do it. I certainly shan't hold my hand when I got anything by it and reaching out for. When I can get anything in it by reaching out. And for the sake of such a man as he was, I promise you, Joe, returned the woman coldly, don't drop that oil upon the blankets now. His blankets? Asked Joe. Who else you think? Replied the woman. He isn't likely to take cold without him, I dare say. I hope he didn't die of anything catching, eh? Said old Joe, stopping in his work and looking up. Don't you be afraid of that, returned the woman. I ain't so fond of his company that I'd loiter about for such things if he had. Ah, you may look through that shirt till your eyes blink. You won't find a hole in it nor a threadbare place. It's the best place he had, and a fine one too. They'd have wasted it if it wasn't for me. What do you call of wasting it? Asked old Joe. Putting on him to be buried in it, to be sure, replied the woman with a laugh. Somebody was fool enough to do it, but I took it off again. If calico ain't good enough for such a purpose, it ain't good enough for anything. It's quite as becoming to the body. He can't look uglier than he did in that one. Scrooge listened to this dialogue in horror. As they sat grouped about their spoil in the scanty light afforded by the old man's lamp, he viewed them with a desiccation and disgust which could hardly have been greater, though they had been obscene demons marketing the corpse itself. Laughed the same woman when old Joe, producing a flannel bag with money in it, told out their several gains upon the ground. This is the end of it, you see. He frightened every one away from when he was alive to profit us when he was dead. Oh, sorry, the old woman. This is the end of it, you see. He frightened every one away from him when he was alive to profit us when he was dead. Spirit, said Scrooge, shuddering from head to foot. I see. The case of this unhappy man might be my own. My life tends that way now. Merciful heaven, what is this? He recoiled in terror, for the scene had changed, and now almost touched a bed, a bare, uncurtained bed, on which, beneath a ragged sheet, there lay something covered up, which, though it was dumb, announced itself in awful language. Excuse me. The room was very dark, too dark to be observed with any accuracy, though Scrooge glanced around it in obedience and a secret impulse, anxious to know what kind of room it was, and on it, plundered and bereft, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, was the body of this man. Scrooge glanced towards the phantom. Its steady hand was pointed to the head. The cover was so carelessly adjusted that the slightest raising of it, the motion of a finger upon Scrooge's part, would have disclosed the face. He thought of it, felt how easy it would be to do so, and longed to do it, but had no more power to withdraw the veil than to dismiss the spectre at his side. Oh, cold, cold, rigid, dreadful death! Set up thine altar here, and dress it with such terrors as thou hast thy command, for this is thy dominion. But of the loved, revered, and honored dead, thou canst not turn one hair to thy dread purposes, or make one feature odious. It is not that the hand is heavy and will fall down when released. It is not that the heart and pulse are still, but that the hand was open, generous and true, the heart brave, warm, and tender, and the pulses a man's. Strike, shadow, strike, and see his good deeds springing from the wound, to sow the world with life immortal. No voice pronounced these words in Scrooge's ears, and yet he heard them when he looked upon the bed. He thought if this man could be raised up now, what would be his foremost thoughts? Avarice, hard dealing, griping cares? They have brought him to a rich end, truly. He lay in the dark, empty house, with not a man, a woman, or a child, to say that he was kind to me in this or that. And for the memory of one kind word, I will be kind to him.
A cat was tearing at the door, and there was a sound of gnawing rats beneath the hearthstone. What they wanted in the room of death, and why they were so restless and disturbed, Scrooge did not dare to think.
"Spirit," he said, "this is a fearful place. In leaving it, I shall leave its lesson. Trust me. Let us go." "I shall not leave its lesson. Let us go."
Still, the ghost pointed with an unmoved finger to the head.
"I understand you," Scrooge returned, "and I would do it if I could, but I have not the power, Spirit. I have not the power."
Again it seemed to look upon him.
"If there is any person in the town who feels emotion caused by this man's death," said Scrooge, quite agonized, "show that person to me. Spirit, I beseech you."
The phantom spread its dark robe before him for a moment like a wing, and withdrawing it revealed a room by daylight where a mother and her children were. She was expecting someone with anxious eagerness, for she walked up and down the room, starting at every sound, looked out from the window, glanced at the clock, tried but in vain to work with her needle, and could hardly bear the voices of the children in their play. At length the long-expected knock was heard. She hurried to the door and met her husband, a man whose face was careworn and depressed, though he was young. There was a remarkable expression in it now, a kind of serious delight, which he felt ashamed, and which he seemed to struggle to repress. He sat down to the dinner that had been hoarding for him by the fire, and when she asked him faintly what news, which was not until after a long silence, he appeared embarrassed how to answer. "Is it good or bad? Is it good," she said, "or bad?" To help him.
"Bad," he answered.
"We are quite ruined?" "No, there is hope yet, Caroline."
"If he relents,"
she said, amazed.
"There is. Nothing is past hope, if such a miracle has happened."
"He is past relenting," said her husband.
"He is dead."
She was a mild and patient creature if her face spoke truth, but she was thankful in her soul to hear it, and she said so with clasped hands. She prayed forgiveness the next moment and was sorry, but the first was the emotion of her heart.
"What the half-drunken woman whom I told you of last night said to me, when I tried to see him and obtain a week's delay, and what I thought was a mere excuse to avoid me, turns out to have been quite true. He was not only very ill, but dying then."
"To whom will our debt be transferred?"
"I don't know, but before that time we shall be ready with the money, and even though we were not, it would be a bad fortune, indeed, to find so merciless a creditor in his successor. We may sleep tonight with light hearts, Caroline."
Yes. Soften it as they would, their hearts were lighter. The children's faces hushed and clustered around to hear what they so little understood were brighter, and it was a happier house for this man's death. The only emotion that the ghost could show him, caused by the event, was one of pleasure.
"Let me see some tenderness connected with the death," said Scrooge. "Or that dark chamber, Spirit, which we just left now, will be ever present for me."
The ghost conducted him through several streets familiar to his feet, and as they went along, Scrooge looked here and there to find himself, but nowhere was he to be seen. They entered poor Bob Cratchit's house, the dwelling he had visited before, and found the mother and the children seated round the fire, quiet, very quiet. The noisy little Cratchits were as still as statues in one corner, and sat looking up at Peter, who had a look before him. The mother and her daughters were engaged in sewing, but surely they were very quiet. "And he took a child, and set him in the midst of them." Where had Scrooge heard those words? He had not dreamed them. The boy must have read them out, as he and the spirit crossed the threshold. Why did he not go on? The mother laid her work upon the table, and put her hand up to her face. "The color hurts my eyes," she said. "The color? Oh, poor Tiny Tim." "They're better again now. They're better now again," said Cratchit's wife. "It makes them weak by the candlelight, and I wouldn't show weak eyes to your father when he comes home for the world. It must be near this time." "Past it, rather," Peter answered, shutting up his book. "But I think he has walked a little slower than he used these last few evenings, Mother." They were very quiet again. At last she said, and in a steady, cheerful voice that only faltered once, I have known him walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulders very fast indeed." "And so have I," cried Peter. Often. And so have I, exclaimed another. So had all. But he was very light to carry, she resumed, intent upon her work, and his father loved him so that it was no trouble, no trouble. And there is your father at the door. She hurried out to meet him, and little Bob, in his comforter, he had need of it, poor fellow, came in. His tea was ready for him on the bob, and they all tried who should help him to it the most. Then the two young Cratchits got upon his knees and laid each child a little cheek against his face, as if they said, "Don't mind it, father, don't be grieved." Bob was very cheerful with them, and spoke pleasantly to all the family. He looked at the work upon the table, and praised the industry and speed of Mrs. Cratchit and the girls. They would be done long before Sunday, he said. "Sunday? You went today, then, Robert?" said his wife. "Yes, my dear." "Yes, my dear," returned Bob. "I wish you could have gone. It would have done you good to see how green a place it is, but you'll see it often. I promised him that we would walk there on a Sunday." "My little child," cried Bob, "my little child." He broke down all at once. He couldn't help it. If he could have helped it, he and his child would have been farther apart, perhaps, than they were. He left the room and went upstairs into the room above, which was lighted cheerfully and hung with Christmas. There was a chair set close beside the child, and there were signs of someone having been there lately. Poor Bob sat down in it, and when he had thought a little, he composed himself and kissed the little face. He was reconciled to what had happened, and went down again, quite happy. They drew about the fire and talked. The girls and mother working still, Bob told them of the extraordinary kindness of Mr. Scrooge's nephew, whom he had scarcely seen but once, and who, meeting him in the street that day, and seeing that he looked just a little down, said Bob, inquired what had happened to distress him. "On which," Bob said, "for he is the pleasantest spoken gentleman you ever heard, I told him, 'I'm heartily sorry for it, Mr. Cratchit,' he said, 'and heartily sorry for your good wife. By the by, however he knew that, I don't know.'" "Knew what, my dear?" "Why, that you were a good wife," replied Bob. "Everybody knows that," said Peter. "Very well observed, my boy," cried Bob. "I hope they do. Heartily sorry, he said, "for your good wife. If I can be of service to you in any way," he said, giving me his card. "That's where I live. Pray come to me." "Now it wasn't," cried Bob, "for the sake of anything he might be able to do for us so much as for his kind way, that this was quite delightful. It really seemed as if he had known our Tiny Tim and felt with us." "I'm sure he has a good soul," said Mrs. Cratchit. "You would be sure of it, my dear," returned Bob, "if you saw and spoke to him. I shouldn't be at all surprised, mark what I say, if he got Peter a better situation." "Only hear that, Peter," said Mrs. Cratchit. "And then," cried one of the girls, "Peter will be keeping company with someone and setting himself up." "Get along with you," retorted Peter, grinning. "It's just as likely as not," said Bob. "One of these days, though, there's plenty of time for that, my dear. But however and whenever we part from one another, I am sure we shall none of us forget poor Tiny Tim, shall we? Or this first parting that there was amongst us." "Never, father," cried they all. "And I know," said Bob, "I know, my dears, that when we recollect how patient and how mild he was, although he was a little child, we shall not quarrel easily amongst ourselves and forget poor Tiny Tim in doing it." "No, never, father," they all cried again. "I am very happy," said little Bob. "I am very happy." Mrs. Cratchit kissed him, and his daughters kissed him, and the two young Cratchits kissed him, and Peter kissed himself. And Peter and himself shook hands. Spirit of Tiny Tim, the childish essence was from God. "Spectre," said Scrooge, "something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me what man was that man whom we saw lying dead?" The ghost of Christmas yet to come conveyed to him, as before, though at a different time, he thought, indeed. There seemed no order in these latter visions, save that they were in the future, into the resorts of businessmen, but showed him not himself. Indeed, the spirit did not stay for anything, but went straight on, as to the end just now desired, until besought by Scrooge should tarry for a moment. "This court," said Scrooge, "through which we hurry now, is where my place of occupation is, and has been for some length of time. I see the house. Let me behold what I shall be in days to come." The spirit stopped. The hand was pointed elsewhere. "The house is yonder," Scrooge exclaimed. "Why do you point away?" The inexorable finger underwent no change. Scrooge hastened to the window of his office and looked in. It was an office still, but not his. The furniture was not the same, and the figure in the chair was not himself. The phantom pointed as before. He joined it once again, and wondering why and whither he had gone, accompanied it until they reached an iron gate. He paused to look around before entering. A churchyard. Here, then, the wretched man whose name he had now to learn lay underneath the ground. It was a worthy place, walled in by houses, overrun by grass and weeds, the growth of vegetation's death, not life, choked up with too much burying, fat with repleted appetite, a worthy place. You guys need more fire? Give me 1 minute. Oh shit, it dropped? Guys, I can go back. I'll do it better. Where did we drop at? I'm sorry about that. I figured it would come back on its own. There's a lot of wood in there. I just had to catch. So if we miss something very quickly, please tell me and I will go back. The start of Cratchit's house? Oh my god. So be it. The start of Cratchit. Oh, weird. You had audio but no picture? Okay, quick vote. Are we going back or not? I'll do either. Okay. Battery video, but audio is peachy, moody lighting, lovely fireside reading. This looks like it could be a new show. It's fine. Chat wouldn't load on my end. Carry on from where we were. It sounds like we're continuing. Nobody seems to want to go back. Yeah, I didn't even have to touch it. That fire just caught on. Ahem. A churchyard. Here then the wretched man, whose name he had now to learn, lay underneath the ground. It was a worthy place, walled in by houses, overrun by grass and weeds, the growth of vegetation's death, not life, choked up with too much burying, fat with repleted appetite, a worthy place. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. He advanced towards it, trembling. The phantom was exactly as it had been, but he dreaded that he saw a new meaning in its solemn shape. "Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point," said Scrooge, "answer me one question. Are these the shadows of that things which will be? Or are they the shadows of things that may be only?" Still the ghost pointed downward to the grave by which it stood. "Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends, to which, if preserved in, they must lead," said Scrooge. "But if the courses be departed from, then the ends will change. Say it is thus with what you show me." The spirit was immovable as ever. Scrooge crept towards it, trembling as he went, and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name. Ebenezer Scrooge. "Am I that man that lay upon the bed?" he cried, upon his knees. The finger pointed from the grave to him and back again. "No, spirit! Oh, no, no!" The finger was still there. "Spirit!" he cried, clutching tight at his rope. "Hear me! I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been, but for this intercourse. Why show me this, if I am past all hope?" The spirit... For the first time, the hand appeared to shake. "Good spirit," he pursued, as down upon the ground he fell before it. "Your nature intercedes for me and pities me. Assure me that I yet may change these shadows as you have shown me by an altered life." The kind hand trembled. "I will honor Christmas in my heart, and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Oh, tell me, I may sponge away the writing on this stone." In his agony he caught the spectral hand. It sought to free itself. But he was strong in its entreaty and detained it. The spirit, stronger yet, repulsed him. Holding up his hand in a last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down onto a bedpost. Stave 5, the end of it, the final chapter. I think there's very little left, so we should just press on. Oh yes, very little. Yes! And the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. Best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own, to make amends in. I will live in the past and the present and the future, Scrooge repeated, as he scrambled out of bed. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. O Jacob Marley, heaven and the Christmas time be praised for this. I say it on my knees, old Jacob, on my knees. He was so fluttered and so glowing with his good intentions that his broken voice would scarcely answer to his call. He had been sobbing violently in his conflict with the spirit, and his face was wet with tears. They are not torn down, cried Scrooge, folding one of his bed curtains in his arms. They are not torn down, rings and all. They are here, and I am here. The shadows of the things that would have been may be dispelled. They will be. I know they will. His hands were busy with his garments all this time, turning them inside out, putting them on upside down, tearing them, mislaying them, making them parties to every kind of extravagance. I don't know what to do, cried Scrooge, laughing and crying in the same breath, and making a perfect Laquan of himself with stockings. I'm as light as a feather. I'm as happy as an angel. I'm as merry as a schoolboy. I'm as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everybody. A Happy New Year to all the world. Hello here. Whoop, hello. He had frisked into the sitting room and was now standing there, perfectly winded. There's the saucepan with the gruel in it. There's the saucepan that the gruel was in, cried Scrooge, starting off again, going round the fireplace. There's the door by which the ghost of Jacob Marley entered. There's the corner where the ghost of Christmas present sat. And there's the window where I saw the wandering spirits. It's all right. It's all true. It all happened. Really, for a man who had been out of practice for so many years, it was a splendid laugh, a most illustrious laugh, the father of a long, long line of brilliant laughs. I don't know what the day of the month it is, said Scrooge. I don't know how long I've been among the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite a baby. Never mind, I don't care. I'd rather be a baby. Hello, whoop, hello here. He was cheeked in his transports by the churches ringing out the lustiest peals he had ever heard. Clash, clang, hammer, ding, dong, bell. Bell, dong, ding, hammer, clang, clash, joined the ding-dong gang. Oh, glorious, glorious. Running to the window, he opened it and put out his head. No fog, no mist. Clear, bright, jovial, stirring, cold. Cold, piping for the blood to dance to, golden sunlight, heavenly sky, sweet fresh air, merry bells, oh, glorious, glorious! What's today? Cried Scrooge, calling downward to a boy in Sunday clothes, who perhaps had loitered in to look about him. Eh? Returned the boy with all his might of wonder. What's today, my fine fellow? Said Scrooge. Today? Replied the boy. Why, Christmas Day. It's Christmas Day, said Scrooge to himself. I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. They can do anything they like. Of course they can. Of course they can. Hello, my fine fellow. Hello, returned the boy. Do you know the poulterers in the next street but one at the corner? Scrooge inquired. I should hope I did, replied the lad. An intelligent boy, said Scrooge. A remarkable boy. Do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there? Not the little prize turkey, the big one. What, the one that's as big as me? Returned the boy. What a delightful boy, said Scrooge. It's a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, my buck. It's hanging there now, replied the boy. Is it? Said Scrooge. Go and buy it. Walker, exclaimed the boy. No, no, said Scrooge. I'm in earnest. Go and buy it and tell them to bring it here, and I may give them the direction where to come take it. Come back with the man, and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes, and I'll give you half a crown. The boy was off like a shot. He must have had a steady hand at a trigger who could have got a shot off. He must have had a steady hand at a trigger who could have got a shot off half so fast. I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's, whispered Scrooge, rubbing his hands and splitting with a laugh. He doesn't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim. Joe Miller never made such a joke as sending it to Bob's will be. The hand in which he wrote the address was not a steady one, but write it he did. Somehow went downstairs to open the street door, ready for the coming of the poulterer's man. Stand by. The hand in which he wrote the address was not a steady one, but write it he did somehow, and went downstairs to open the street door, ready for the coming of the poulterer's man. As he stood there, waiting his arrival, the knocker caught his eye. "I shall love it as long as I live," cried Scrooge, patting it with his hand. "I shall scarcely ever looked at it before. What an honest expression it has in its face. It's a wonderful knocker. Here's the turkey. Hello, whoop, ha. How are you? Merry Christmas." It was a turkey. He never could have stood upon his legs, that bird. He would have snapped him short off in a minute like sticks of sealing wax. "Why, it's impossible to carry that to Camden Town," said Scrooge. "You must have a cab." The chuckle with which he said this, and the chuckle with which he paid for the turkey, and the chuckle with which he paid for the cab, and the chuckle with which he recompensed the boy, were only to be exceeded by the chuckle with which he sat down breathless in his chair again, and chuckled till he cried. Shaving was not an easy task, for his hand continued to shake very much, and shaving requires attention, even when you don't dance while you are at it. But if he had cut the end of his nose off, he would not have put a piece of sticking plaister over it, and been quite satisfied. He would have put a piece of sticking plaister over it, and been quite satisfied. He dressed himself all in his best, and last got out into the streets. The people were by this time pouring forth, as he had seen them with the ghosts of Christmas present, and walking with his hands behind him. Scrooge regarded everyone with a delightful smile. He looked so irresistibly pleasant, in a word, that 3 or 4 good-humored fellows said, "Good morning, sir, and a Merry Christmas to you." And Scrooge said often afterwards that all of the blithe sounds he had ever heard, those were the blithest in his ears. He had not gone far when, coming on towards him, he beheld the portly gentleman who had walked into his counting-house the day before, and said, "Scrooge Marley's, I believe." It sent a pang across his heart to think this old gentleman would look upon him when they met, but he knew what path lay straight before him, and he took it. "My dear sir." "My dear sir," said Scrooge, quickening his pace, and taking the old gentleman by both hands. "How do you do? I hope you succeeded yesterday. It was very kind of you. A Merry Christmas to you." "Mr. Scrooge?" "Yes," said Scrooge. "That is my name, and I fear it may not be pleasant to you. Allow me to ask your pardon, and will you have the goodness—" Here Scrooge whispered in his ear. "Lord bless me!" cried the gentleman, as if his breath were taken away. "My dear Scrooge, are you serious?" "If you please," said Scrooge. "Not a farthing less. A great many back payments are included in it, I assure you. Will you do me that favor?" "My dear sir," said the other, shaking his hands with him, I don't know what to say to such munificence." "Don't say anything, please," resorted Scrooge. "Come and see me. Will you come and see me?" "I will," cried the old gentleman, and it was clear he meant to do it. "Thank you," said Scrooge. "I am much obliged to you, and I thank you 50 times. Bless you." He went to church, and walked about the streets, and watched the people hurrying to and fro, and patted children on the head, and questioned beggars, and looked down into the kitchens of houses, and up to the windows, and found that everything could yield him pleasure. He had never dreamed that any walk, that anything, could give him so much happiness in the afternoon. So much happiness. In the afternoon, he turned his steps towards his nephew's house. He passed the door a dozen times before he had the courage to go up and knock, but he made a dash, and he did it. "Your master at home, my dear?" said Scrooge to the girl. "Nice girl, very." "Yes, sir." "Where is he, my love?" said Scrooge. "He's in the dining-room, sir, along with the mistress. I'll show you upstairs, if you please." "Thank ye, he knows me," said Scrooge, with his hand already on the dining-room lock. "I'll go in, my dear, my dear. I'll go in here, my dear." He turned it gently, and sidled his face in round the door. They were looking at the table, which was spread out in a great array, for these young housekeepers are always nervous on such points, and like to see that everything is right. "Fred," said Scrooge. Dear heart alive, how his niece by marriage started. Scrooge had forgotten for the moment about her sitting in the corner with the footstool, or he wouldn't have done it on any account. "But, bless my soul," cried Fred, "who is that?" "It is I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner. Will you let me in, Fred?" "Let him in? It is a mercy he didn't shake his arm off. He was at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could be heartier. His niece looked just the same. So did Topper when he came. And so did the plump sister when she came. So did everyone when they came. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness. But he was early at the office next morning. Oh, he was early there. If he could have been there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late, that would have been the thing to set his heart upon. And he did it. Yes, he did. The clock struck 9. No Bob. 1/4 past. No Bob. He was a full 18 minutes and a half behind his time. Scrooge sat there with the door wide open. He might see him come into the tank. His hat was off before he opened the door, his comforter too. He was on his stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock. "Hello," growled Scrooge in his accustomed voice, as near as he could feign it. "What do you mean by coming in here this time of day?" I'm very sorry, sir," said Bob. "I am behind my time." "You are?" repeated Scrooge. "Yes, I think you are. Step this way, sir, if you please." "It's only once a year, sir," pleaded Bob, appearing from the tank. "It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday, sir. Now, I'll tell you what, my friend," said Scrooge. "I'm not going to stand this sort of thing any longer. And therefore," he continued, leaping from his stool and giving Bob such a dig in the waistcoat that he staggered back into the tank again, "and therefore, I'm about to raise your salary." Bob trembled and got a little nearer to the ruler. He had a momentary idea of knocking Scrooge down with it, holding him, and calling to the people of the court for help with a straight waistcoat, a straitjacket. "A Merry Christmas, Bob," said Scrooge with an earnestness that could not be mistaken, and he clapped him on the back. "A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, and I have given you a many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family, and we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop. Bob, make up the fires and buy another coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit." And so Friday I'll be making a bowl of smoking bishop on my YouTube show. Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more, and to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good as a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh, and little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good, at which some people did not have their fill of laughter in the outset. And knowing that such as these would be blind anyway, he thought it quite as well that they should wrinkle up their eyes in grins as have the malady in less attractive forms. His own heart laughed that he was quite enough for him. He had no further intercourse with spirits, but lived upon the total abstinence principle. What the fuck? Quit drinking. Sorry. He had no... terribly out of character. He had no further intercourse with spirits, but lived upon the total abstinence principle ever afterwards, and was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that be truly said of us, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone. The end. Right on time, too. I kind of estimated I'd finish up around 1 o'clock, so. Well done. Thanks, guys. This was great. This was really fun. How many people are still watching? Oh, 74 of you. I thought I said 24. That's wonderful. Poker. Give me a poker. Let's see if we can get a light out of here. There we go. There we go. Q&A? Question and answer? Sure. Oh, what happened to my finger? I'm telling people I cut it in a kitchen accident. But there's 4 stitches in there. I have not had Joaquin's pineapple vodka. Yeah, I'm happy to hang out with you guys for a while, by the way. This will be great. Yeah, and there's 2 of them are straight through the nail, too. It's very pleasant. Oh, no. No, it was a It was done with a sharpened implement. Was not a Flaming Homer remake, but I will tell you that damn near cutting off the tip of my finger, significantly more painful than the broken toe. By the way, people always ask me how is the toe doing, and I always tell them it's doing great, but I will tell you that it still feels broken. I think it will for the rest of my life. If I really step on it, I feel it. I feel it. How did you like my tavern punch? Excuse me, I love it. Ooh, man, bandsaws. Scary things. Oh, it looks like I'm not caught up in the chat room, am I? I'll tell you what I really did. I bought a half a cord of wood, and I have a splitting maul, a short splitting maul, like a one-handed splitting maul, and I was outside trying to make kindling. If you've ever split logs, it's pretty easy. You stay far away from you, split them, splitting logs, and then some of them you say, oh, this would be a good kindling. And you take your maul and you knock it into the top, and then you work it down, and you take off little pieces. Except that, right into my finger. Very dumb. I had my hand in the wrong spot. If I had been down here, it would have been fine. But I was holding onto the top like a moron. And that's how you live and learn. It took so little pressure. So little pressure. Just... Ugh. Balled up my fist. Made my wife drive me to the hospital. I was lucky she was off. Spent the whole day getting 4 stitches. Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Well, it's a maul too, so a maul is less sharp than an axe. And actually, I think if it had been an axe or a hatchet, it wouldn't have happened because I wouldn't have had to use any force to get it set into the wood to start splitting off the kindling. Because it was a maul, I had to kind of thwack at it a little bit to get it in there and then start working it down. Yeah, it's I didn't go through, and the doctor told me that my fingernail may not quite look the same again afterwards, but that there shouldn't really be any scar. So, well, that's exactly right, and I think Selkie, that in this case it was bore out because I think if it had been a hatchet or an axe, it wouldn't have gone that way. Also, if my hand hadn't been there, if I had been gripping from instead of the top on the side, I would have been, fine. Do you have a picture of your hand from before? You have to. I should do a before and after. Yeah. Nope. Actually, so those logs would not burn this well. Unfortunately, I may have gotten snookered a bit. I bought half a cord on Craigslist and seasoned, not really. Knowing that I didn't want to have to fuss with the fire too much and I wanted it to really be raging for this, I went out and picked up a eighth cord of kiln-dried wood for about $60. And that burns super hot and super duper easy. Oh yes, my wife's. I think those are from Target or something. Decorations. She's very good at decorating, and I think these are actually like antiques from her great grandfathers or grandfathers. I have a bit of water here. Sure, there is a slow mo close up in the vid somewhere. Family's good, Ink and Teeth. How's you? Last tabletop game I played was my own session of Dungeons and Dragons. Unfortunately, I have a very limited social life. Yeah, I am out here in New York. I'm actually in New Jersey now. I can see New York out the window, but that's what you're here for, yes. No, I haven't ever made Tom and Jerry, so I'm saving that one for next Christmas. Unfortunately, this year, I had no shortage of Christmas drinks to do, with mulled wine coming up, and I've got a little video that's coming out on Christmas Eve. It's not specifically Christmassy, but I think it makes sense. You'll see. Campfires in the living room are difficult. Favorite whiskey, no budget? Favorite whiskey, no budget. I'm a Blanton. I haven't had a bottle of Blanton's in a long time, but I used to like it very much. I gotta say, I'm in love with Bonded Old Grandad as far as a budget bourbon goes. It is unbelievably good and it's so damn cheap. When filtering drinks, does anyone have any tips for a milk punch and losing my mind? So I think the Binks, you should start with a coarser filter. It'll be faster to filter it more times. So start with like a very loose filter, like a dish towel or something like that, and work your way up to something like a coffee filter. You want to get. I mean, I would scoop out everything you can with like a sieve or something like that, or a colander even. If you have good heavy curds, it should come out like that. And then you want to send as few particles into your fine filter as you can, or you can just wait. You can stir it as you go as well. That helps a little bit. I never played Metro 33. Super glad my manager of D&D and cocktail and whiskey culture collide. Channels I want to collab with. I don't know. It's a great question. Do you ever create your own drinks off the cuff? Me? Yes. I love Blanton's. I knew I liked you for a reason. Well, there's a few reasons. Still waiting for the How to Drink and Hot Ones mashup. Yeah, I'd love to be on Hot Ones. That's not a collab. That's a get. That's a big deal. I did a collab with Babish. I think that there's some. We've traded words with Townsend's. I don't know what happened there. I was supposed to go out there in February and maybe do something with him, but that email chain kind of went cold. Yeah, I'd love to do something with MCDM. Those guys are really cool. It's Tom, by the way. I would like to. There's been a little bit of talk between me and the guys at the Whiskey Tribe. We might do something together. There has been a little bit of talk between me and. Why can't I remember the name of their channel right now? It's an aphasia. I have a name recall issue. Rogue. What the heck is their called? Glorious Rogues or something like that. Something Rogue. Yeah. That's the thing is that I think that Modern Rogue. Yeah, Modern Rogue. That's the one. I would like to collaborate with people who are kind of. I think it's more interesting to collaborate with people who are outside of my kind of niche. I think that's much more interesting. I think that the fans probably enjoy seeing. Mooj, easy answer. If you like pina coladas, I think that the fans probably enjoy seeing two shows that they already love collaborate. But I personally think it's much more interesting to be in a position to introduce my fans to somebody that they don't know exists, and vice versa. To be introduced to somebody else's fans and that they don't know and that they don't know me. I have a funny suspicion that the Whiskey Tribe and How to Drink have the same fan base, and maybe less so Townsend's, but that Modern Rogue does for the most part. But I could be wrong. I don't know. Collab with a younger YouTuber who maybe isn't huge into drinking and doing some entry level stuff. Modern Rogue. I would like to do collabs that don't involve drinking sometimes. I know I'm the drink guy, but I mean, there's other things I'd like to do. I'd like to do something with a sailing channel. I would like to do something, some sort of a joke, but I feel like there's like stuff that's really outside of my wheelhouse, like makeup artists and bakers and all those people. I think there's all kinds of things we could do. How to sail. Yeah. Well, if I ever manage to get a cheapo sailboat, I can assure you I'll be doing videos from it. Kid who does cooking stuff named Josh Weissman. I'll check him out. Oh, Greg talks politics. Yep, I'd like to do that, maybe, but I feel like I might lose some fans. Any more Soda Jerk? Probably. Want to visit the Outer Banks? I would love to. I've been to Oak Island. That was a really neat spot. I know it's not the Outer Banks, but I feel like it's close. The don't understand flavor profiles. How do you learn to identify them or taste one? Grix, I think that. So here's the funny thing. Somebody once told me. Basically, it's like The key thing that I talked to somebody who was training to be a sommelier years and years and years and years ago, and I asked them how they were practicing for that because they had like a whole tasting kit that you can buy, this sommelier training kit of like different profile, like 80 little vials that you can smell and taste. Um, exactly right, Binks, and that's kind of why I'm trying to do different stuff over here on YouTube. I went to Oak Island because my wife's cousins have a place there. Want to visit Kansas City? Sure. Kill Devil Hills, some pecan honey. Okay, so back to the tasting thing. And basically, what he said to me, and it's like a simple thing, but it was like a revelation. He got he said a bunch of different things, but basically, it was like, oh, it's it's not like tasting food, like where you put food in your mouth and oh, this tastes good. Like you have to make a conscious effort to taste it, and like just like changing my level of thoughtfulness about it and saying, "Well, wait, what was that?" And like trying to go back and answer that question until I had it made a big difference. Um, my notes are definitely not the same as what someone else is going to say, but I definitely taste all the parts. I just may not have all the words. It's similar to coffee. It isn't, yeah, and there's acquired taste, of course, as well. So a podcast, yeah. So I mean, earlier today I streamed what I'm calling Coffee with Greg, which I want to make a weekly thing. It's going to be kind of like a morning show. I hope to have some guests on too. I have friends who come by. I'm sort of building out a new. I would happily collab with Cocktail Chemistry. We shot a collab that never got released actually many years ago. Would I consider yourself a good cook? Um, I am an okay cook. I think that shooting cooking is a big job that I'm not set up for. I don't stream on a schedule yet, but I may be committing to a proper schedule for streaming like next week, as early as next week, or as early as this week. It looks like Tuesday mornings might be a pretty decent time to stream, and I think that might be the day that I do a weekly kind of morning show. So this morning I streamed. I'm not into sports. Um, sorry. Yeah, it was his idea, and I feel really bad because I shot it, and it just like I didn't have time to edit it, and by the time I got something cut together, it was like long time had gone by, and honestly, it really just didn't come out that good. Do you intend to upload? Yes. So, not even marble racing. I've never been to marble races, so maybe that would hold my interest. I don't know. Um, Sorry, do I intend to upload this? Yes, but at my new channel, which is H2D2, and you'll find on one side of this thing, there should be a place down there to find that. And you should, if you want to see these things later, you should subscribe. How was all the nog? Well, I don't know if you missed the tasting, but the winner, it turned out, was surprisingly Target brand light eggnog. That was the best light. How do we feel about robe? Is that what it said? How do you feel about robe? You're a man of wealth and taste with cocktails and watches. How do you feel about robe? That's what I like to hear, Death Sausage. Thank you. It means a lot to me. Um, I am kind of pretentious about cocktails, and I think that keeps me honest and prevents me from developing a problem, which certainly runs in my family. Literally, you want to know if I like to wear a robe? It's what do you feel robes? Oh, okay. Well, you know what's funny about that? I We just bought a robe as a costume piece for an upcoming episode, and I have it, and I don't own any other robes. I have endeavored to try to wear it sometimes. Thing is, I tend to get out of the shower, dry off, and then I get dressed. There's not like a lot of. My wife is real into bathrobes. I'm not. I don't know. It never caught on with me. I think a smoking jacket might be in order, though. I kind of did want to get like a smoking jacket and a fez or something to wear for this, as silly as it sounds. That guy put on his robe and wizard hat. That's right. Yeah, kind of that. That's kind of the thing, Captain. Captain, make it happen. Any favorite coffee or espresso-based cocktails? I think a very good. I love coffee and espresso-based cocktails. I think a well-made espresso martini is fantastic. That drink I made, the mega seed extract. Oh, God, that was good. That's a great drink. Thanks, Zenith. How you doing? I don't smoke. And I know I would make a great cigar and tobacco pipe smoking kind of guy, but I don't smoke. Thank you. I like a cardigan. Am I related to old Greg? I am. Oh, I love a late night coffee. Oh, yeah. Kilt for the win. I have worn a kilt. I used to go to Ren fairs, and I would wear a proper, historically accurate hand, like a toga, basically, which is what like a, Renaissance. And then there were no kilts back then. It's a little historically inappropriate. I have done. I would like to do more woodwork. I had a really terrible table saw that I put out some nice stuff on, but it would just like piss me off. You couldn't cut straight on it, and everything burned. So I would like to get a more appropriate table saw. What is your hidden talent that you would love to show off if you could? That's a great question. I don't know. No downstairs mix-up. What am I missing here? Ancient, look up cybersexing. The Bulodnij. My wife can't stand juniper, and I want to meet her halfway here. Alchemist. Gin that doesn't have juniper as its botanical, at least not as a primary botanical. Some people like Uncle Val's. It's not my favorite gin, but it's low on juniper. And then the other one I would say, of course, is Hendrick's. Is pretty low on juniper. You love how far I swing to the left. There's an uncompromising assuredness about it. You're talking about my framing here? Or are you talking about my politics? What is no downstairs mix-up? What am I missing? So confused by that. Creamy and beige. What kind of music are you into? Jazz, exotica, 60s protest folk music, 1980s hardcore punk rock. Love the Dead Kennedys. Some goth bands. Nine Inch Nails. Always have a place in my heart for Marilyn Manson. A couple of albums at least. I'm kind of all over the place. Cole Porter. Love Cole Porter. I don't use a beard oil. And actually, a brand approached me about trying to sell their beard oil. They wanted me to be a sponsor or whatever. I'm like, I put beard oil into my beard once. I was like, this is disgusting. Who would? More power to you if you like it, but I couldn't understand. I was like, why would I want to oil my face? I hated it. I don't know the Slackers. I'm not big on ska, or at least modern ska. Like a lot of early ska. Like I love Madness. Love them. Fantastic. I guess that's not really early, actually. Madness is like third or second wave, even, right? Real skas. Thank you. Glad you like the framing, canisters. Use wax to shape my beard, but not straighten it. Yeah, I have used mustache wax. I did have like enough of a stash to do like a kind of a handlebar thing, mostly for costume purposes. Second wave, I think, is new wave UK ska, right? Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it is new wave UK. I don't know if that makes it second wave or third. Probably second. Thanks, the Banks. Yeah, so I think if I had a really long beard, I would need oil, right? But I don't know what these weird blue flashes are that you keep seeing out there. There is a window back there. It could be the lights in the town below. Or is it just like camera artifacts? I think that's camera artifacting. Oh, weird. Like little blue flashes all over the frame. What the hell is that? You guys seeing that? Ska is a Caribbean music that is related to, but not the same as reggae, that was adopted, that went to the UK and was adopted by new wave, like post punk or punk adjacent bands. How does that work? A song list? Like, can I get a like just link up like my Spotify account? I feel like there's like rights issues with that, right? I don't know. Thank you, Heart of Feather. Heart of Feather. Uh, Someone else can tell you. a little injury. Yeah, you do have to be careful with copyrighted music. Like, I have a music library that I have rights to for YouTube use, but I don't think I have rights to it for here. Why is my... Are you guys seeing, like, these weird little blue flat, like, jags? Or is that just in my feed here? If you guys see, like, little blue flashes in the picture, let me know. Rick Beto. I don't know Rick Beto. Okay. It's probably... So I'm actually... All my cabling is running down the stairs to where my regular streaming computer is, and I'm sitting up here on a laptop, remote desktoping into that computer. So there's probably some weird stuff going on with that. See, like, and that's why my answer was about kind of like first wave ska, where there's really no brass or horns. It's just about where the downbeats fall, if I'm not mistaken. I've never been to, I don't have any favorite bars in Philly, but I've spent a lot of time there. I'm breaking the interwebs? What did I do? Yeah, the fire is hot. I know it's not really showing up on camera, but it is just like nearly invisible pale blue flames. It's just wild. Making jazz. This is my current loaner from Crown and Caliber. It is a Rolex day date from 1977 or 78 in yellow gold on a leather band. I really like that combo. It's pretty small. It's like 36 millimeters, which for like modern guy watches is like, ooh, it's like a little dainty thing. But I like it a lot, actually. It's very practical. The only thing I don't like about it is that in the 70s they were doing this like really like high rise crystal on top, and it's kind of weird because like the bezel ends here, and then there's like a lot of plastic that comes up, and also it's really loud. I don't have particularly good hearing, but I can hear this thing ticking all the time in a quiet space, and it kind of makes me feel like I'm going crazy. Art of Manliness doesn't collab with anybody, as far as I can tell, and I've dug into that. I don't know that I really want to collaborate with them, to be honest. I was a reader of theirs many years ago, and then I don't know. I don't want to say anything because I don't know enough to say anything for sure. But I remember once they were like, we don't take submissions from anybody. It's just me and my wife. That's it. They were like really adamant about that. Here's finger in a sword fight with I like that one. Usually not a fan of leather bands. Yeah, I'm a big fan of leather bands. How long do you get to hold on these watches? Typically a month, although I've held on to this one a lot longer because I need it for some close-ups that I failed to shoot on my last episode. I work at a dine-in movie theater quite a few times. I work your own takes on certain drinks. Oh, I don't know if mine's better. It's just different. Up by a shard when doing a close-up on a break. I do have a scar on this hand from a shard from sabering a champagne bottle that's coming out on an episode. I shot a episode for New Year's Eve, I'll tell you guys now, called Will It Saber, where I just tried to saber as many champagne bottles as I could with various objects, and turns out that was kind of stupid. I have really thin wrists, so I don't know what kind of watch I could even pull off. This is a good watch for a smaller wrist. Open a YouTube tab and play this watching a stream. Turnabout Jazz Soul, Track 8. Godot, The Fragrance of Dark Coffee. What games are you playing recently? Well, really just Outer Worlds. All my gaming is on Twitch. I don't have any personal gaming time. There's only gaming for you. I mean, not that I'm not gaming for me as well, but if I'm gaming, I may as well be streaming. So, do you use a multi-tool? No, I don't have a multi-tool. I got a little buck knife. That's about it. Been looking for a smaller watch. A lot of watches tend to be pretty big. A lot of modern watches are. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the trend of the modern watches being gigantic. What they call penis extenders. A big fan of leather bands. Favorite Judas Priest album. I wish I knew more about Judas Priest to have a favorite Judas Priest album. I'm gonna say British Steel because that seems like a good answer. With a film. I would love to do stuff with film. Yeah, that's so. Like, there's a lot of things that I want to be able to do that I'm going to do on Twitch. Like, I want to do film reviews. I think that's going to happen on Twitch or a second YouTube channel. We're going to do like a talk show, interview format thing here eventually. We're going to do more gaming. We're going to do D&D. We're going to do tastings are going to happen over here. I'm going to be scheduling that in the coming weeks. I'm in the process of converting the back half of my office to like a streaming set that will be just like a standing set for all this streaming content. And I really need to do much more I'm a fan of pocket watches. Not particular. I don't have anything against them, but I'm not a fan of pocket watches. Are you crafty in other mediums and cocktails? Probably, but I don't really think about it. I mean, I can do some woodwork. What about drinks to have while watching movies? Yeah, well, I mean, that was like a plan I had, sort of. I think there's a lot I can talk about with movies and maybe link it to a drink. I've been listening, watching to your videos. Well, I appreciate your videos. My boss got hooked with the Probate and Drinks episode. Thank you. Take on specialty drinkware, Glencairn, and others. I'm going to come back to that in a second. What are my PC specs? My PC is not a PC. It is a 2015 iMac that I reboot into Windows to play games on. And so people have pointed out that my frame rate is garbage, and they are correct. You should collab with Alex Steele and make some barware. According to your finger, you're not that good with woodworking. All right, fuck you. It has given me pause. So, specialty drinkware. I think it's dumb, honestly. I think that the Glencairn is a bunch of hype. I own them because I got tired of being complained at about it, but frankly, look, man, the World Whiskey Federation or whatever was tasting. People have been tasting whiskey for a really long time and in a serious way. And the Glencairn is like 18 years old or something. I think that what really happened here is that somebody noticed that there was simply no official glass and decided there's money to be made here. And they just made up a glass. And now it's the official glass. And it's cheap enough that nobody questions it because they're cheap. They're like $7 or $8 or $10 a pop. Think about how much money you can make by having ownership of the official glass. That's what I think. I don't think it matters. But, I mean, it's not the hill I'm going to die on. If people want me to drink whiskey out of a Glencairn, I will. According to your finger, production value of your videos, did you learn at college or start off at the bottom in the industry? A little bit of both, and I'll come back to that in a second. Watching all the videos makes me want to get into the bar tools and try your recipes. What do you think of Blanton's? I like Blanton's. It used to 5 bottles for $37. Good fucking God. Whew, I want your time machine. Appreciate how you interact with your followers. You're an awesome dude and my hubby and I love to watch. Well, that's great. Yeah, that's kind of, I mean, I don't fault him for it. I think it's amazing if you can create a product that people will like fight you. Like, no, this is important. I don't buy it. I'm sorry. I just don't think the science adds up. So I went to high school. I had like some ideas about what I wanted to do for a career. And one of them was I would like to make movies. I found out that my uncle's college roommate way back in the 60s, was a director. Now, later, that's what everybody called him. I found out later, of course, that he was an assistant director, which is nothing like a director. It's like a line producer kind of job. It's completely different. It's the person in charge of the schedule. It has nothing to do with actual creative stuff, which is fine. It's just a different job. Anyway. And so everybody said, well, you should ask him where you should go to college. And I asked him, and he said I should go to the School of Visual Arts in New York or UCLA. But if you want to stay in New York, you should go there. And I said, okay. And I never applied. I was too scared to apply. I didn't think I had the chops. And then I went to the Art Institute of Philadelphia, and I majored in industrial design. And I thought I was going to be a prop maker and a costumer, and like I'd do like special effects makeup. And then it was 2001, so I joined the Army instead. And then I had a parachute accident, and I got out of the Army. And then I repossessed cars for a while, which was miserable. And then I somehow got back in touch with John, the director, and he said, you can come up to the studio and maybe we can use you. And I showed up for 3 days without being paid. And then he paid me a little bit of money anyway. And then he said, you're a pretty decent PA. Why don't you become a set PA? So I got to be a set PA. And I was like, it's not like a steady job. Like, you're on the list and you're not the top of the list. So it's like, you got to be a PA. I didn't realize what I was doing. Nobody would held my hand. Nobody told me how to be a freelancer. Nobody told me how any of this worked. And I'm like really trying to pay my bills. And it was like not a great way to do it. And I was commuting when I got called in. Like, I couldn't live in the city. I was living way out in the suburbs at home. So it was like a 3-hour commute each way to work a 15-hour day. So it was pretty miserable. But we were making food commercials in slow motion, tabletop stuff, big time. Big food commercials. It was a great place to learn that. And then I kind of was like, well, this isn't like a thing that's going to work. I'm not going to be able to make a living as a PA on this thing. And so I had other opportunities that I thought would also lead me back to film. I did learn some stuff. I learned a lot. And I got to work with like a film studio and everything. It was cool. Well, yeah, it's not entirely me, but that's where it starts. Yeah, about the pores. Thank you, Scoot Streams. I suppose I have the gift of the gab. So then I went and I was a stagehand in Atlantic City, and I would push heavy boxes and build lighting rigs for big rock bands. And you're not like designing anything. Like this is like blue collar union work. It's like you got a union hall. It's like, Greg, we need you and like 50 other guys at 3 a.m. to load out Kiss. They're coming in 18 trucks, and we got to build the stage and rig everything up. I did that for like half a year or whatever, and money was great at the time, but it was also very apparent to me that like this is the career. This doesn't go anywhere else. If I do this, I'll do this forever. And then I had a day job as I was working as a rodman, as a land surveyor in February in Atlantic City, and it was miserably cold. And I said, I got to go to college. So this is like years after, trying to go to one college in the Army and I decided I was going to go to school of visual arts, like I always said I was gonna, or like I should have. And I applied hard, and I got in, and then I took out a stack of loans I have yet to repay, and I went to school, and I majored in film, and everybody asked me what you wanted to do, and I said I want to direct, and so they said you should major in directing, and I was like, is there jobs for people directing degrees when they get out of school? And they all said, no, but you should major in directing if that's what you want to do. I went to the School of Visual Arts for film. I got out, and there was obviously no jobs for me to direct movies or commercials or anything right out of college. And I struggled to find a job, and the lady who was my wife was my girlfriend at the time, and she said, you got to find a job. And a friend of mine who had graduated ahead of me was an editor. He had been freelancing around, and then he had fallen into what we call a permalance job. This is a editing job in any freelance capacity where you're not on staff, but you don't work anywhere else because you're working all your time there. And he kept trying to tell me, like, Greg, I can get you all the editing work I have to turn away. You should take it. And I was like, I'm not an editor, man. I'm a terrible editor. I don't know anything about editing. I hated editing. I really hated it. And finally, I got hungry enough that I said, okay, fine, I'll be an editor. I taught myself After Effects. I locked myself in with my computer for a couple of weeks and did like every tutorial I could on Video Copilot.net so that I could be a bad editor who also knew After Effects. I figured that would be my calling card, and it worked out kind of well. And I didn't know what an editor got paid, and Jesse said there's this nonprofit I work with. Jesse is the guy who graduated ahead of me and got me in editing. And they need someone to come and be an on-site for this like summit that they have. And they said, well, they didn't know. I said, what's your rate? And I said, could you pay me $100 a day? And the lady in charge was like, I'll pay you $150. So for like a long time, I worked at $150 a day as an editor. But I was like, I got to do it though, because like I had nobody else was calling. And occasionally, I would get hired on like real jobs, and I would be like, I got to go to this other gig, guys. I'm not going to be available for a little while. And I would do a week at like a real rate, and then I'd go back to garbage money. And it was rough, man. And then I fell into a permalance gig that paid okay. And for 3 years, I cut like sports videos. I don't know if any of you guys have ever run a Tough Mudder, but if you did, I probably edited a video that you were in. I cut like every video for Tough Mudder for like 3 years. I did a bunch of skiing stuff. I cut some lacrosse documentaries. One documentary I was really into was we did a documentary about the U.S. Olympic rugby team and their training and going into the Olympics. I was actually happy with the way that one came out. That was a pretty cool doc. No, I've never been a big sports fan. I mean, I watched football for a while, but I'm just not big on sports, and that's nothing to do with that job. And I told them, they're like, do you watch sports? I was like, no. And they said, well, then cool. Then you'll bring like an outside perspective. I was like, fine, sure. I mean, when I say like, this place was the owner's dad, me, and another guy. That was the whole staff. It was like a small shop, and occasionally a few other people would come in. I did that for a while. And while I was doing that, I had the idea for this show. And I shot with a friend who had a camera, a cinematographer who I knew from school. We had a camera for one day. We shot the first 7 episodes in my living room. And then we shot a few more. Then I actually lost that camera. And then another friend who I met at the sports job, was an associate producer who came in sometimes. He was like, Greg, this is so good. You got to do more. You got to do more. He's Stefano. You may have heard of him in a couple of episodes. I've mentioned him, I'm sure. And he found us another camera we could use for free. And So then we shot some more episodes, and, making the show. Then in the course of that, I had a kid. And then like 2 weeks after my kid was born, I was doing the math on what I was making so when you go permalance, they talk you into taking a pay cut from a freelance rate a lot of times. They're like, well, this is guaranteed work. You know what I'm saying? So whatever your day rate is out in the biz, in here you should take a big chunk off that because you know where your money's coming from. It's not an argument without merit, but I mean honestly, if you can be busy as a freelancer, you're going to make a lot more money and work fewer hours. I did the math, and I got a call for a freelance gig, and I had not been getting freelance calls on the side really, and it was like from an agency, and I was like, oh shit, and I went and worked there for a couple days while I was on paternity leave, so to speak. I wasn't really on paternity leave. There was just no work to do at the shop, and my boss took it as a great opportunity to be like, take a month off, save me some money, because don't get paid. And I was there for a few days, and they really liked me, and they were intimating that they might want me to come full time, but I was like, there's not going to be enough money. I'd actually have to take a pay cut to go there if I go full time. I'd get benefits, but I don't need benefits because I get them through the wife. But it made me do this math where I was like, holy shit, one, I cannot afford I can't afford to stay at the permalance job I'm in now. But two, if we go freelance, it was like I would have to work like half of the days of the year to make the same amount of money as I was making permalance, which seemed reasonable. And so I was like, at the very least, I'll work half as much, but have twice as much time to pursue how to drink, which I figured was the thing that could really be a job, a real income. Or in the best case scenario, I'll be very busy, and I'll give myself a raise. It turned out I was very busy. I was really busy. I mean, for a couple of years, I was working like just continuously freelancing as editor at various shops. Only a few clients, but that's all you really need if they're busy. And all the while trying to make How to Drink up at the same time. And then we had to move to New Jersey for my wife's job. Anyway, this is the whole story. Moved to New Jersey. Cost of living went down a little bit. And butterbeer happened. Channel started blowing up a little bit more and started pulling a little bit more money and kind of like tightened the belt way, way up and yanked the Band-Aid off and decided to make How to Drink my full-time job. It wasn't, so like a lot of people are like, oh, I just got to wait for this to make more money. It wasn't that. I just decided to make less money so that I could pour all my resources into How to Drink. Yeah, we were living on the Upper West Side for 4 years. A lot of people are like, I'm just like trying to get this thing to have a creative pursuit and it's making a little bit of money, but I'm trying to make it into enough money so that I can switch over. There's no version of that that's ever going to be painless. Like you have to take sort of a leap of faith in my experience and my observation to put the oxygen into that fire, to have the oxygen to give to that fire to get it hot. It's not going to get hot unless you're extremely lucky without more of your attention than you can give to it on a part-time basis. Anyway, so that's how I got into this. That's how I went to film school and all that stuff. I had to leave. I went from manager to 3 hours a week and had to leave. Finding work is hard, but it's out there. It's impossible, yeah. I noticed that. Yeah, the viewership went up. It's crazy. I've told this story a few times, too. Ever do a porn star martini? I don't think I've ever had a porn star martini. I'm just going to scroll back and see some stuff I missed. In some of your older videos, you say you never worked in a bar, while others say you were a bar back. So in New Jersey, we talk very fast. So if I say I've never worked in a bar, been a bar back, been an apprentice in a bar, I'm saying I've never worked in a bar 3 different ways. I'm not saying I've never been, but I have been. So I'm just saying I've never worked in a bar. See, Andrew, that's the thing. I don't know. Once I had like there's like freelancing is funny. There's like different phases of it, and it gives you confidence, man. It gives you so much confidence professionally. Like if you have a decent client pool and you don't really like the way a job is going, you can tell somebody, yeah, I don't need you. Like, and you can't do that if you're an employee. I got to a point with freelancing where I actually really felt pretty free. It's just that the hours were so long. Oh my God. And I like the hours are long on How to Drink too, like extremely long. Like here I am at 1:30 in the morning. Yeah, it helps when you're not lazy, but I am lazy. I'm real lazy. Cornwall, New York. That's up stayed a bit, I think. We were in New York City, in Manhattan for a while. Contract opportunities might not work for a ton of money, but my job is pretty nice. It is. It's tough, yeah. And especially if you don't have benefits. If you have, like, thankfully my wife has great health insurance, and I'm married to her, so I have great health insurance. But if we didn't, I don't know how I could work in, like, a contract basis, a cash industry like that. Would be almost impossible. Oh, you're very welcome, Grix. I'm glad it was inspiring. Safety consultant also has a running for mayor. And I hear him balancing those things is rough. Yeah, that sounds rough. Running for mayor and freelancing. There's like a phase in your freelancing career where you're like a slave, in a way. Even though you're your own boss, you have to take every single job that comes your way, and you have to take every pile of shit that gets shoveled down your throat because you're desperate for the work and the money and the clients, and you have nothing else. And you're constantly, the whole time, you're like, where am I working next week? I don't know. And if you're good and lucky, very lucky, and I've been very lucky, it always clicks, you know. There's always be like, oh shit, when this gig's over, I got nothing lined up. And sure as shit, every single time something fell into my lap. I was extremely fortunate. I don't think I'm a bad editor either. I think that's a factor, and I think I'm fairly easy to work with, but I'm just lucky. I really am. At the end of the day, I'm lucky to have those qualities. Oh, the battery just died on my camera. I'll swap it. Give me 1 second. As a matter of fact, why don't we take just a 5-minute break? I'm going to throw on the Be Right Back video. I'll swap the battery. I'm going to fill up my glass, and I'll be back in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Okay, I'm back. Oh, threw another log on the fire, but it landed bark down, so I don't know if it's actually going to burn or not, but we'll see. All right, so scrolling. You need the insurance, absolutely. You know, it's going to start to get political in here, but I got to tell you, if people truly believe that small businesses and entrepreneurs and people starting their own thing are the lifeblood of the American economy, universal health care frees up a lot of people to pursue single pair frees up a lot of people to go and pursue the great ideas that they have to create. You know, I would not have been able to be an editor at all if not for the fact that we were very fortunate that my wife had phenomenal public sector union health care. And same wise, I could never create How to Drink. And I think there's a lot of people out there with... damn right, man. Anyway. Seems like such an opportune time. I have not drank this since we swung it from the bottle for Rick's, but Stefano works in an ad. By the way, people are like, "Oh, I'd be so pissed at you if you put your lips on that." Stefano works at an ad agency that reps Hennessy. He stole this from a set, so don't worry about it. Felt like it's time to bust out the good brandy. Guillotine them. Interesting notion. Isn't there more useful things we can do with them? Put them to work or something? As I drink the bougiest booze I could possibly lay my fingers to. This is Hennessy XO, which is like $250 a bottle or something insane. Crimson, yeah, man. I just found out that I've got a full thickness delaminating cartilage tear and a partial thickness delaminating cartilage tear in my right knee. I may have something else in my left. I have a crippling fear of flying to the point that I don't fly. Hey, man, I didn't pay for it. Like I said, it walked off of a set. So, cheers. I like Old Granddad, maybe even better, honestly. This is perhaps a little, might be lost on me. It's okay. It's good. Yeah. Yeah. The knee didn't, I mean, I've had knee trouble ever since that hard landing. But it was only a few months ago, man. I was like following my kid around trying to get her onto the toilet and like bent over the wrong way and something snapped in this thing. Like it just tore loose and I was down. Of course I've had Lagavulin. I've had plenty of Lagavulin. I respect Lagavulin. I like Lagavulin. The peaty stuff, and this goes for mezcal, it's like half the time for me, it just is like a surprise migraine trigger and I have no way to predict it. So I like it and I refuse to do, like fly. I don't know, man. It's a tough question. Let's get a drunk stream. I think all my streams are a little bit drunk, guys. I don't know how to tell you. Yeah. Marketing will do that for you. Well, I should probably just flip that log over because it's just going to smolder and get smoky. Well, there's no recovery. It's the cartilage isn't bioreactive, so there's no healing going on in there. I'm just learning to live with it. There's a surgery I could have maybe where they would borrow some cartilage from another part of my knee and patch it in. I don't have any favorite mocktail. I mean, thoughts on gin? Oh boy. Not started into your 41 video gin play. I have 41 video gin playlists. My God. I have not tried Voodoo Floss. I don't know anything about that. Aspiring bartender wondering if there are any types of bars you can recommend in terms of personality. Types of bars you can recommend in terms of personality. I don't know. That's a broad question, Tiny Rick. I mean, I've been to some pubs in London I loved. I've been to some bars in New York City I loved. I've been to some places in California I loved. Personality. Like in an area? Are you looking to go look? How many H2D? One session. A session, as in a day. So we shoot the masters on today, and then we'll shoot the close-ups tomorrow. And I think the new number is 12 because episodes have gotten longer. It used to be more. I used to be able to do like, God, 14, 15 episodes a day. I think now we're struggling to hit 12. I'm gonna scroll up a bit because I feel like I've missed some stuff. So I gotta look into Advocat. It's very similar to eggnog, I think. Hold on a second. How far ahead? About 2 months. It's usually about 2 months. We're in a tricky spot here because we're trying to figure out when to schedule our next shoot for. It's looking like it's going to be probably January 9th through the 13th, and then that will cover us for episodes to hopefully the beginning of March. I hope. Ooh, that's not good. Potator. I wish I could. I got to do more working out. Yeah, there's like not much you can do about it with a cartilage thing. They just kind of have to like. Basically, it's like you're gonna have to rebuild your knee at some point. I have not been to Hales Pale in Portland. I've never been to Portland. Does Milk and Honey still exist? It doesn't. Milk and Honey is gone, sadly. However, you can go to Attaboy, which is so Milk and Honey was at 123 or whatever the number is, Eldritch Street, and Petrosky said, "I'm moving the bar up to 23rd Street," but the head bartender, the two head bartenders at Milk and Honey said, "Well, good luck. We're going to take over the lease and open our own bar right here called Attaboy." So it's basically Milk and Honey. Milk and Honey opened on 23rd Street, and it was wonderful. It was so great in there. I loved that place. And then, of course, then sadly they lost their lease, and then Petrosky died. Um, yeah, potato. Yeah. I mean, my fear of flying is like not scientific. It's like, I feel like I've escaped the clutches of the sky god, and when I get back up there, he wants me back. It's like it's crazy. It's crazy. I don't think it's unreasonable to have a fear of flying. I think it's a perfectly reasonable fear. I just don't think that. I still don't think. I mean, I have my whatever. Favorite pub style bar in New York City. The missus and I popped down for an occasional weekend from New Hampshire for a show. Have you ever been to the Dungeons in New Orleans? I've never been to the Dungeon. I have been to New Orleans, but it's been many years. You ever have to fly, just remember it's safer to fly whatever distance you're taking than to drive. Yeah, that's true, especially across the ocean. That's true. I know that's true. Although that 730 to 7 Max doesn't really fill me with a lot of confidence. I'm glad that thing's out of the air. I think Boeing is fucked. I think they're going out of business, or they're going to end up getting, well, this president won't nationalize them, but they should. Because, like, they're going to end up getting a huge bailout. And whatever. I'm pretty sick over that whole thing. Favorite pub style bar in New York City? Man, Dead Rabbit is great. But I will say I spent a lot of time at McSorley's in college. McSorley's is wonderful. No cocktails. It's just two kinds of beer. McSorley's blonde, McSorley's red, and sawdust on the floor. It's a cool spot. The bailout is going to be crazy for Boeing. It's crazy. I don't know, the way station. Good night, Crimson. Thanks for hanging out. Favorite beer or style of beer? I love a good Kolsch. I like a brown ale. That's about it. Those are my bar beers. I'm not an IPA guy at all. Oh, I guess we interrupted the session. That's true, though. So we've been doing 2:45. Yeah. Yeah, I like a stout and a porter on occasion. Heavy, you know. It's like nap time food. Yeah, I don't do it. I'm not big on IPAs. Great pecan porter. Ooh. Yep, their Irish coffee's a lot better than mine. Been getting more into sour beers. I've had a few sours I like, and I've definitely had some sours I don't like. Except in the case of the 737 Max. I mean, I guess the airlines never should have flown it, but the FAA said it was certified to fly. I mean, there was fundamental facts about the plane that were concealed from the airline operators that Boeing knew that were dangerous. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's fucking crazy. The land of Kolsch. Special drink for New Year's. There will. Kolsch is like a very light blonde beer. It's a session ale. I think it's like usually like 4%. It's like the beer at what do you call it? At Oktoberfest, right? Ouchies. I think one thing to keep in mind about an IPA too is that it would have been shipped unrefrigerated in the belly of a ship from England to India before anybody drank it. Those hops would have been mellowed a lot. It would have been, a highly aged beer. I'd like to see some aged IPAs. I think that'd be interesting. I'd like to see somebody take it and throw it on oak for 8 months and serve it to me then. My favorite meal. Question. Yeah, I have an interest in writing a book. I'm definitely Randstead Room in Philly. Okay. Yeah. Favorite bands. I don't know. I'm not up on modern music. You had Old Speckled Hen. I have, but it's been a really long time. Um, well, there should be ads when you guys jump in. I guess. I don't. I guess I could be. I have a button here I can push to run ads. Should I run some more ads? I've done some smoked drinks on the show. On shot first. Belgian blondes when it comes to beer. Yeah, I live in a town of 100,000 people, 60% of whom are college students. There's only one bar in town that serves a real whiskey sour. And they're only open once a month with a password. Do you think this is the death of the whiskey sour as we know it? What? Damn, potato. What the hell? What bar is it? What town? Let's see. You go to an unnamed Ivy that anybody can get into. Do you go to Brown? I'm trying to think of what bars are up there. Doesn't go to Brown. Also, I misquoted you. You didn't say that anybody could get into. Do you? The Ivy League is a very specific league of college sports teams. But all right, that's how it's been explained to me. I could be wrong. What kind of Ivy League schools in Canada? Whiskey sour will live on. Have faith. San Miguel beer. Probably good beer. Hawkeye and lemonades. Fire's like a special guest. I knew that log was going to catch at some point. Fireball is terrible. That's my opinion on it. It's a cinnamon liqueur that uses whiskey as its base, supposedly. Okay. I don't actually potato. I don't know any of the schools up there. I apologize. I'd hoped I would get more fill light off of it, but I'm really getting nothing, so it's okay. Yeah, it really shouldn't be called whiskey, honestly. I don't know why that is, I don't know how it works out that it gets to be called whiskey. That seems weird to me. I guess there's whiskey in it, but I also would love to know how they define that whiskey. Like, it's gotta be the cheapest whiskey. Yeah, it's like 60%. It's not full. It's not as strong as whiskey at all. If I'm right, it's how many proof is Fireball? I'll look it up. It's only it's not. You can't sell it as spirit. Add cinnamon syrup to whatever you like. What percent ABV is Fireball? I think it's like 35%. So Fireball is 33%, so 66%. You can't sell anything under 80% and call it whiskey. So under 80%, under 80 proof, under 40%. So it doesn't really meet the legal definitions of a whiskey at all, as far as I know. Flavored whiskey, got it, yeah. Spent a lot of time in the Maritimes growing up in Canada. If you're looking for cinnamon whiskey, Jack Daniel's cinnamon, it's good. Are you into wine at all? Not really. I'll drink it if you put it in my hand. I like a port once in a while. Do you have a specific favorite drink? I think I usually give the answer that I really like a perfectly made Mai Tai. I think a perfect Mai Tai is exquisite. I drink a lot of old fashions. I think a good old fashioned is perfect. I'm more of an old fashioned person than a martini person. On a rare occasion, I'll have a hankering for a martini. I think the best drink I ever made on the show, and the one that surprised me the most, was the El Presidente, made exactly the way that I made it, with that Ron Santiago 11-year and the Lillet Blanc. My favorite band? I don't know, man. That's tough. I'm not. I don't know. Have you ever drank a drink, any type of umeshu? I don't know what the heck that is. Are we destined to fight to the death? Probably. Do you have a Mai Tai video? Yes, I do. Perfectly made daiquiri. Very good, but I still prefer a Mai Tai. I'm a big rum guy. And with flavored whiskey, you can have almost anything in a bottle as long as it gets distilled from grain. Right, yeah. I'm leaning towards the latter. Hemingway style. Martini, sweet or dry. I like a 2-to-1 ratio with orange bitters, dry. Anything under medicinal grade alcohol content isn't real whiskey. Well, it's not though. Like it's not. It legally isn't, right? Like it just isn't whiskey. Star Wars, Star Trek, or both, or neither. It's a great question, actually. I love both. It's funny. I'm probably more critical of Star Wars than of Star Trek, although I do not like the J.J. Abrams Star Trek films. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, I can't get into Doctor Who. Doesn't work for me. Doctor Who. I'm glad people like it. It's just not my jam. Have I watched Discovery? No, I haven't seen Star Trek Discovery. What's in the glass is, believe it or not, NEXO. Wildly expensive stuff that I was gifted. And sitting by the fire, it seemed like an opportunity to get out. No one knows Fodder. I don't know what Fodder is. Favorite Star Trek series, Next Generation. Stop motion versus CGI. That's a weird question. I can elaborate, but hold on. The laws around whiskey tables are bonkers and convoluted. Yes. I want to see Picard. I'm interested in Picard. Force Awakens was good, just poorly directed. Force Awakens. Oh, that Force Awakens was the first new one, right? I didn't see roasting by number. It's expensive. Is it really good? It's okay. I didn't buy it. It's okay. It's pretty good. I don't know that I have. I don't know that I'm trained enough to tell you the difference between really good brandy and okay brandy, okay cognac. It just seems like it's fine. I haven't watched The Expanse yet. So yeah, probably a lot of people do that. See you later, Ink and Teeth. So I never read the books, Lord of the Rings. I saw the movies in theaters. I am not a particularly large fan of them. I'm just not. They're okay. I had a girlfriend at the time who was like obsessed with them. Well, it depends on what Hennessy it was, too. I mean, the XO is bonkers expensive. I think, there's some regular label Hennessy stuff you can get at a pretty normal price. I kind of... Okay, so I talking about Star Wars and Star Trek. Yeah. History of How to Drink covers history of drinks. So I have a friend who's a real hardcore Lord of the Rings fan, and he tells people that the movies were made by a man who hated Lord of the Rings and wanted to make a parody of the books. I don't have an opinion like that, but R.A. Salvador. I never read any of his books. Oh man, I think the guy who wrote Star did. I love that director Verhoeven. I thought he got it. I think that the audience didn't. I mean, maybe he could have done a better job. I don't think that the audience got that it was satire, and I guess that's on him. But I also think that says something about us. Oh, he didn't read the book? Oh, I didn't realize that. Maybe that's great satire, yeah. Um, it's a satire of the source material. Wasn't the source material a satire too, or is it not? I don't know if it was actually. I don't know if the source material was meant. I tried to read the book, but I kind of didn't finish it. Okay, so Star Wars. I think that I have a whole film review about a whole talk about Star Wars that is kind of on the cutting room floor of a recent episode that I don't know what to do with. I don't know if it's going to stand on its own or not. I'll just tell you. I think that first off, I think that Marcia Lucas, or Marsha Lucas, I don't know how you pronounce it. It's part of the Blue Milk episode, but it's not in the episode because I don't know how to really. Oh God! So Heinlein was pro nuke. All right, weird. I did not read Snow Crash. I read the first chapter. I don't know why I read the first chapter. I think it was around on a shoot that I was on, and I picked it up and that was it. Anyway, during the period of I think you're right. The public couldn't absorb the satire of my young self. Yeah, I have been enjoying it, although the Dragon Soul Orgy episode was a little bit weird for me. It's like, ooh, don't make. Although I did still think it was great. I haven't done any complaints about it. You slut dragon. Absolute least favorite type of alcohol. Without a doubt, it's Gaoling or Gaoling Baijiu. It's undrinkable for me. I can't do it. Um, okay, so just quickly about Star Wars. I think that one, George himself went through a big rethink about what he was doing with the movies and who they were for between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. He decided it was for a different audience than he originally had, or he decided, having grown up and having kids of his own, that he had different ideas about what was appropriate for kids. Because Return of the Jedi happens. I mean, it seems to exist in a completely different universe. I realize, like growing up, I didn't recognize that, but now I see it. I read a review too that kind of helped me understand it. Like, oh shit, it does. Like the first two movies are very much westerns, and they're dark. I mean, they're pretty dark. There's like real serious, terrifying consequences. And then in Return of the Jedi, like remember, right, in Empire Strikes Back, the last time Luke and Vader see each other, Vader is trying to hacks off his arm and like telling him, "I want to rule the galaxy with you," and he's just like in a murderous rage. And then Luke falls off of a fucking ledge, presumably to his death, and that's the last time they see each other. And the next time they see each other, they're just having like a cordial father-son chat. I know there's still good in you. Where is any of that coming from? Where is any of that coming from? So, um, I don't know if it's that. I think that George went through a divorce, and I think that he had different influences around him, and I think that Marsha's influence was really keenly felt in the first two films, and it was missing from the third movie. And I think that he changed his mind about what kind of conflict and violence and resolution he wanted to expose to kids, you know, because he was making ostensibly kids' movies. I think he had a rethink about that. I'm not a fan of the prequels, but I will say that at least the prequels brought new ideas to it. I kind of feel like the new movies, particularly The Force Awakens, it just felt like there's nothing new here. It's just like treading on old ground. Now I have a kid who's a girl, and she got to meet Rey at the Star Wars land, and so like she's not old enough for it yet. And I don't know if she ever, I don't know. A lot of people getting shot and stuff, and then I don't know how appropriate that any of that is for kids. I do appreciate Rey, and I think that my kid will appreciate that and does appreciate that. So that's a good thing. Um, a drink to the movie. Jar Jar was clearly the best character in the series. So much death. Okay, yeah, right. I mean, remember, you know, if you guys don't remember, maybe, but in addition to the Return of the Jedi, he did a whole series called Ewoks, which was like a total kids show about Ewoks. You know, he put teddy bears into the movie, right? There's Ewoks. Um, and kids do love the new movies, absolutely. And I think that a lot of what's in the new movies don't really make sense. I also think too, if you watch, if you ever get your hands on any behind the scenes stuff from the production of the films, I think that Harrison Ford was absolutely instrumental in making those movies good. I mean, absolutely. He's directing the actors. If you watch the behind the scenes footage, he's the guy figuring out how the dialogue lands and how to make it work. Like he stops. You know, there's like a great scene where he's just like, where he's talking with Mark Hamill, like, no, if we don't land it like this, the joke doesn't work. It's not funny. It's not coming from a director. It's coming from Harrison Ford. And the same thing is true if I know, I don't know where I found it, but I had behind the scenes footage on Raiders. And all the time in Raiders, he's arguing with the stunt coordinator, but I have a gun. Why don't I shoot this person? Well, you're a sporting guy. I'm not. I'm playing the character. I know who he is. He's not. And so that whole story about him being sick and not wanting to shoot the fight with the scimitar guy and just with the whip and everything, I think it's crap. I think he just refused. I think he wanted to shoot him because he was like, I'm not doing it the other way. It's the wrong thing for my character, and I'm just not going to do it. I think Harrison Ford, and I think this is true, you know, this is what I was talking about before about being a freelancer who's unafraid. If you can not be afraid of losing your job and tell people, fuck you, I'm not doing it that way, you can have a huge influence and make things better. So I really think that Harrison Ford was instrumental in making those movies good. Actually, and I mean, it's a fact, too, that the first cut of New Hope was like 40, there's like a lot a whole first act that got like thrown away because of Marcia, I don't know how you pronounce it, fixing the edit, and it would be a terrible movie with those scenes. Terrible, like a fucking. You would never have watched it. You wouldn't have given a shit. I do not subscribe to the Jar Jar with a Sith Lord theory. I think it is nonsense, but I appreciate people putting it together. They're not just slow. Like there was a great YouTube video that did a whole breakdown of how that movie was saved in the edit. They are introducing this character who's not involved in the plot. The plot is about these plans and getting them to where they have to go, the Death Star plans. Hanging out with, we don't need to see Luke Skywalker until he meets a droid. But there was like 6 scenes of Luke Skywalker watching the battle through binoculars over Tatooine, and like going to meet his friends to talk about it. Good night, Okuma. Jar Jar would probably drink sea brine or something. H2D2 is not yet. It's active. It's going to be where my streams go. So the VODs will wind up there. Well, I mean, I'm telling you too about Potato. Like, there is like Super 8 footage I've seen. It was on like a Blu-ray special edition. I'll dig it out at some point, I guess. Actually, I probably can't. I don't really have any Blu-rays anymore. But I did, where he's just straight up arguing with them, like, I should shoot people. You're not giving me a reason to use this whip or to get into a fist fight. There's no narrative reason for it. When someone pulls a gun on me or if someone pulls a knife on me, why I wouldn't shoot them. And he was like adamant about that. And I actually think that is to me the thing that ruins movies and novels more than anything else for me. When you don't take a situation and its characters to its most logical next step, and instead take it to the step that you as the writer envisioned. I know that sounds really counterintuitive, but like I just don't think that I think that the writer has a very specific, and the writer being the writer, the director, the editor, all the people who are involved in it, but the writer, right, specific role to put these characters, write these characters as a set of rules, character type, and write the setting as a set of rules and set them loose in it. And if you start muddling about with what's happening, it ruins it for me. It takes me right out of it. It should, like a lot of people say that, like, oh, you just write a more interesting scene. I don't think you can. I think you have to write the scene that those characters would speak. Otherwise, you destroy the verisimilitude of what you've built. And it's hard, and it is, and if it was easy, everybody would do it. But like, I'm trying to think of examples where like, well, why would this happen? Well, the only reason this happened was because the writer thought it was cool, or because the executive producers, Disney, wanted to sell a toy based on it or some crap. And it does them along and it ruins the scene. That's my opinion. Out of Star Trek versus Star Wars kind of fights. Honestly, a major nitty nerd. That's my stuff. All right. I always like, I think he's one of the great actors too, James Cagney. What acting is? His answer was, you plant both feet square, you plant your feet, look the other guy square in the eye, and tell the truth. That's acting. Well, and I agree with that too. I mean, there's plenty of things that I would say are terrible that I love. I think something can be terrible and loved. And I don't begrudge people their right to love things that aren't great. But that doesn't mean we can't say that it's not great. I'm familiar with Blackadder, but I've never actually watched it. I should. See you later, Grix. You know what's funny? Wes Anderson movies have really grown on me. I used to be too cool for Wes Anderson movies. I hated their pretentiousness and their artful, craft. But I have to say, as I've gotten older, I've really grown to appreciate his films. Um, I really liked the hotel one. I thought that was great. I really liked also. I think that what movie I think convinced me I liked him a lot was Fantastic Mr. Fox. I was really impressed by that film. I thought that was a really cool movie. Grand Budapest. I liked that one. I think that's my favorite of his movies actually. So I never saw Bottle Rocket. I will say too. What's the one with the Boy Scout Moonlight Kingdom or whatever? That movie. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it since, but I saw it in the theater, and I gotta say, I was like very impressed with that movie's ability to make me uncomfortable, but in a way that was earned and was craft. Like that. That was it was a well done film. It did not make me happy to watch it or make me, you know what I mean. Like I don't need to see it again, but it was definitely well done. Where am I from? I'm from New Jersey originally. I am not a fan of Richard Linklater. I just can't get into his movies. What movies have I seen recently? God, Frozen 2. Not as good as Frozen 1, by the way. Um, we just watched Us. That was interesting. Us. That was the most recent like grown up movie I saw. I just finally saw it on HBO Go. Kind of spooky. Movies of the decade. I don't know, man. I don't even know what movies came out this movie. I how do I feel about Buffy the Vampires? About to lose a fan. I really don't like Wes Anderson. I don't like him at all. I did watch like the first. I have not seen The Lighthouse, but I want to. I also really want to see. What's that one? Shit. I can't remember the name of it, but I wanted to go see it. Not Parasite. I'll come back to kid shows in a second. I have good ones. Um, I've not seen Midsommar, but I really liked that guy's first movie. Holy shit. Oh my god, that was so good and fucking fucked up. Although I do feel like it cowered it away from like what made it so engrossingly horrific. The third act kind of undid it in a way so that I didn't come away from it feeling like I had crawled into an abyss. And I don't know. I mean, like I appreciate it, but I also feel like a little cowardly of them. I think they should just put me in the abyss, leave me in there. All right, want to see Lighthouse? There's some movie that was in the theaters recently that I was like, oh, I want to see that. Oh, Knives Out. I really want to see Knives Out. Um, I do not like Joss Whedon. I don't like the way he writes dialogue at all, and it's exactly what I was talking about. In that I feel like I see the hand of the writer too much. Like he's present. It is all written in his voice, and it's the same thing with who's the guy that wrote The Social Network? I can't remember his name, but I can't stand his movies either at all. I just cannot watch them. I've heard Jojo Rabbit was good, and I was very, very pleased with. I'm not like a Marvel movie fan to be honest, but I happened to watch The Dark World or Ragnarok, and that was the first Taika Waititi movie I'd seen. And I really thought that was like, holy shit, this is a great fucking movie. It's really well done. So I'm excited by anything that guy does. I want to see it. Um, Midsummer will not make you feel. I got like halfway through What They Do in the Shadows, and for some reason, just that night that I happened to watch it, I was like, I'm going to bed. It didn't like hold my attention. I should check it again. It did seem super funny. Yeah, I don't expect Midsummer to make me feel good. Us was really. I thought Get Out was incredible, and it was one of the most upsetting films I've ever seen. It made me It was extremely depressing. The movie fucking freaked me out. Maybe not depressing. Like it just made me feel like I was having an existential crisis. Um, Us happily did not do that. I think that Us's like third act, it seemed like he hadn't quite figured out some things. Maybe it was intentional, but it was like I don't know. It's just like I really liked the movie and the craft of it and the way it was put together, and I liked the dialogue and I liked the way it was like, and I like so much of that movie that it's hard to say I thought it was a bad film. I don't think it's a bad film. I just feel like a lot of high concept stuff has problems in the third act when it has to kind of start giving out answers. But I don't also don't even think that the explanation of the mystery made much sense. Like I don't know. I didn't see Dark World. I haven't seen 90% of the Marvel films. The concept, like specifically Get Out, freaked me out because the sunken place, like just the notion of it, filled me with absolute dread about like my own mortality. I was just like, oh no, the sunken place. I don't want to go to the sunken place. It really freaked me out. What is up, Lurker? I think this is the film channel. I think we're doing it right now. um, Brightburn put you over your quota for. Oh, that's a horror film? Ooh, I thought The Boys. I don't know why Brightburn reminded me of The Boys, but it does. The Boys, man, that show was good on Amazon Prime. I liked that one a lot. I'm going to probably wrap it up in a bit here, maybe another 20 minutes at most. But, oh, dude, Butterfly, get the hell out of here. What are you doing on That's bad you. Don't do that. Oh, The Boys is so good, man. It's so good. I thought that was really cool. Um, I watched Watchmen. Mostly I liked it. What flavored ice cream? What would Greg flavored ice cream taste like? Sweat and wood, probably. Um, oh, that's a much better. That's a much better question. I don't know, man. Bourbon ice cream would be pretty cool. I love rum raisin when it's done right. Only 15 minutes, then home time. Gotta go. See you later. It just jumped up to 71. We were down to like 50 people. What's going on here? Um, you want to watch Watchmen but don't have HBO? Then I don't want to spoil anything for you. I haven't watched Once Upon a Time. Kind of boring up till the end. Yeah, I didn't watch Hateful Eight either. Honestly, I haven't gotten through that. Good Morning from Europe. Um, I don't know if I'm that interested in bad people doing violent things anymore. I don't know if that's like my jam. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I'm into those kinds of movies. Um, Now the fire is truly mostly embers. All right, Rabbit. That one. I'm glad you like hanging out with me, guys. It's really nice of you. It's very nice of you to say. Hmm. Favorite 80s action movie? Running Man. I don't know why. I just pulled that out of there. Favorite 80s action movie? Could be really pedantic and argue the point that an action movie is not a genre. Um, I did not drink in high school. 100 Lexus and four Roses. Die Hard's pretty great. Die Hard's a great one. First Blood's pretty great. Um, Conan. Is that the 80s? Oh my god, Conan the Barbarian is great. Um, Alien is 79. I don't think Aliens makes the cut, although I did like Live and Breathe, that movie as a kid. I watched it so many times. Terminator. I think Terminator belongs on that list. I just read Christmas Carol. There's saw Midnight Run. Or is that a book? No, I'm not. Really, I don't. I'm not reading anything right now. It's kind of lame. I'm not smart. It turns out. Is it a Christmas movie? No. I'm gonna say no. I think it's a very cheeky thing to say that it is, but I know why. I mean, it's fine if you, but it's not a Christmas movie. It's not about Christmas. It's just not. It's a movie that takes place at Christmas, but it's definitely not a Christmas movie. Your house throws so many parties. We got sponsored by a local beer. Have you been offered any local sponsorships? I don't think so. There's a local antique store that specializes in mid-century modern furniture that I like. Am trying to. Ooh, now that's a great question. HWR podcast. One that comes to mind is Weird Science. I loved that movie as a too young boy, 8 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old. I watched it recently. I was like, ooh, oh, I don't know if this movie aged too well. um, some real fucked up shit in that movie. I haven't really revisited much of Kevin Smith's stuff since I was a younger fella. I would also say the same is true. Revenge of the Nerds, man. I loved that movie growing up. That movie has aged very poorly. Um, and oh yeah, Andrew, absolutely, it's crazy. Um, I mean, I think that goes for both of those movies. Um, I guess less so for Weird Science. Weird Science mostly, honestly, like it's. I think the part of that movie, like honestly, the young boys ogling the girl, no, it doesn't really bother me. Like that is life. Um, and I don't think there's any weird consent issues there. I think that the scene though, and he's pretty good at it. But the scene where Anthony Michael Hall, it's a scene I thought was hilarious as a kid, is basically doing blackface in the bar with the jazz guys. Like, holy shit, man! Holy shit, that is crazy. Um, oh yeah, Airplane. God, I haven't revisited that in forever. But yeah, man. Revenge of the Nerds. The guy's a he's not he's a villain. He's a villain. Holiday Inn is my guilty pleasure. I fucking love that movie. I think Holiday Inn is the better, more interesting version of White Christmas, um, but it has a egregious blackface scene in it. There's no question. But I do think it's apart from that, I love that movie. I mean, I love that song too. I think it's a great song. I just wish it wasn't done the way it was done. It has a lot of blackface, but it has a blackface scene, is what it. I mean, there's only the one scene, right? Um, so and I can break this down for you too. And I consider it a remake because it's the same set and like the same songs. It's literally the same set. They shot it the same set as um, what do you call that movie? White Christmas. White Christmas has no antagonist. The antagonist is a misunderstanding, which I hate. I hate that. I hate when failure to communicate, a breakdown in communication, is like the quote antagonist. I can't do it. It just pisses me off to no end. I mean, only one scene, but it's still a scene. It's still in there, right? But I can't think of it. Holiday Inn has this wonderful interplay, this back and forth antagonism, but like in a friendly way between Fred Astaire and Bing Crosby. Oh, it's great. It's great. Because Fred Astaire is like a real cad in that movie. Um, Yeah, I like that one a lot, unfortunately. Okay, actually, that's a good question. I know a lot of whiskey YouTubers, and they get sent a number of whiskey to try. I see you have some preferred spirits you use outside of the ones that are obviously sponsored and looks like. Do you companies send you bottles to get on screen or for your thoughts? Not as often as you would think, Captain Make It Happen. Not as often as you would think. Oh God, Anatomy of a Murder, Otto Preminger. I love that movie. Love it. Great one. Great flick. I have seen Reanimator. And I tried to revisit it recently, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave my memories of this one alone. I think we're going to. I'll still enjoy it that way. What is your surprise movie of the year? I'm not that surprised that often. Do you have an actor or actress I can't stand? No, not really. Not really. Happy holidays, Green Jean. See you then. Thanks for coming by. This movie of the decade. I think it'd be cool. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting notion. I don't know if it'd be in response to superhero fatigue. I think people crave existential dread. It says something else about the zeitgeist, if that's what's happening. Thoughts on the 2020s are coming to a close. What's the best movie of the decade? I'm going to say a movie that either. I think that the there's a director named um, what the heck, Joel Grenier, whatever, did Blue Ruin is a smaller film, and then his follow up was Green Room, and I loved both of them. I don't know which one is better, but they're both phenomenal. I would suggest they're wonderful movies. They're wonderful movies of a very specific kind. Inception was part of this decade. Yeah, I don't know if I would go with Inception though. I find that although I like his movies on initial viewing, all of his movies I find are less. And yeah, Patrick Stewart was in Green Room. I find that all of that director's films are less and less interesting to me on every rewatch. No, I would play more, and I did stream game, although I think we lost the stream. It fell off of my channel before I backed it up. Unfortunately, that's okay. And we're going to be doing more game streams in the coming weeks and committing to a schedule about it. I only did the one. You make that plural, but I appreciate the vote of confidence. Yeah, we'll be doing more of that. Inception was cool. Blues Brothers for the music. I think Blues Brothers really problematic. I don't know. Remember? Yeah, kinda, a little bit. I am a dungeon master, but I have played rogue frequently. I kicked in at $5. Um, $1 million left, only 2 weeks on the clock. Well, cough it up, Mr. Beast. Come on. I actually wanted to do like a whole live stream in support of Team Trees initially, but it was not possible on my schedule. Good point. That only 2 weeks left. I appreciate Critical Role, but I'm a bigger fan of MCDM, which is um, so I don't know if I'm a critter, but I like what they do. But I don't have a lot of time to consume a lot of media. It's I don't know if other people in my position feel that way too, but like, limit to how much media consumption time I have. Yeah, as a reminder to unfuck us ourselves. Yeah. Oh, I'm drinking a neat pour of Henny XO because I had this bottle and I don't know what else to do with it, and I'm sitting here by the fire, and it seemed like the most appropriate setting to pour that. Prior to that, I had an old fashioned, and in between, I had a neat pour of red breast, which was lovely. I drank a lot tonight, actually. I like Matt's insights into gaming and dungeon mastering, and I like, um, I don't know that I really like the kind of game that they run on Critical Role. I'm just like, I feel a little shy about saying that. It's just like it's not my style of play. Um, you want to buy a nice scotch, but you are broke. Well, I love MCDMs running the game series. It's very good. Am I a loyalist? Loyalist to who? Captain, I think those are perfectly intertwined, inseparable concepts. I don't think that you can have a meaningful role play going on without it being gamist in its nature. In that, I feel like the consequences for actions need to be, um, how to express this. I think that like to a certain extent, you got to play the dice where they land. I don't think that like there's this concept that like no player character. Like I hear a lot of DMs say this, like no player character should die, except for in the most meaningful way and when it makes sense for the story. I think that's bullshit. I think player characters should die when they die. I think that sometimes the point is that life is fleeting and things are out of our control. I think that it was Band of Brothers, man. It was like one of my favorite things about that show. I forget which one it was, but it was like some commander was like going up to the front line. He's like gonna go check something out, and like 10 seconds later, they're just like bringing his body back. We got shot by a sniper. He's like a major character. Um, yeah, and like if you're thinking about that podcast, if you're like a good DM, like you roll with that, and that becomes part of the story. The trick I think is to never write a scenario where the game ends if the players fail. If you write that, then you're creating a situation where you have to make your player characters succeed, and that, of course, takes the agency of failure away from them. Always know what happens if they fail, and be prepared for that, right? Um, and if you do that, I think you can't really go very far wrong. That's my opinion. And then once you're there too, it's like you have no reason to fudge the dice. Like this is just what's happening. This is just what's happening. And then the players are going to bring the story, right? Like if you create a compelling flesh and blood real world, and it will feel real because there's consequences, because everything adds to B. Everything links up. It's not like what I was talking about before, where you can feel the writer's hand putting in the things that the writer wants, as opposed to the things that the story just has, that the setting has, that are there because they have to be there. Then everybody will invest, and everybody will bring their best, and it will bring out the best role play in everybody. And I think that the way you get there is by kind of being a bad bastard about it, to be honest. New Vegas did do it. That's right. They knew how to handle that game with every single character dying. I use a screen because I like to do like spot checks, awareness checks, and things like that in secrecy. Most of my combat rolls will be always happen on the table, but there are things I do behind the screen. I don't want people to see my notes, that kind of stuff. So I use a screen, but I don't use it for the rolls. Because if I do fudge a die, I may not fudge a die roll, or if I do, it'll be because, look, guys, I screwed up. This encounter is way more difficult than I ever imagined it to be, and like, there's no reason to stop the story because of that. You know, that's where I'll fudge, and I'll negotiate that with the players. I'll tell them exactly what's going on and why I'm doing that. I screwed up. It sucks though, because like you kind of rob them of the immediacy of the moment, and you end up robbing them of that scene, that interaction. It doesn't really play out the way that you want to. So can't make it happen. The thing is that what I'm saying here is that actually you shouldn't. I'm not. Play the rules as I play the rules as written, but because it does not matter to the story if the players succeed or lose, and because the setting is going to be equally lethal to everybody, it actually, I think, it inspires you. And it's the way I play characters too. Inspires you to not want a power game. I think that you should play the character that you want, and we'll make it. It will be what it is in the setting. And if that, you should be prepared for that character to die. Last character I played in the game was a 5th edition game that ran for a while, and I played a barbarian, and my primary stat, wisdom. I had like a 16 or 17 in wisdom, and then after that, I think I had constitution, like strength and dexterity, like strength was like my 4th stat or something like that, and it was because like he is a barbarian, he is wise. That's who he is. He's a wise barbarian. It was extremely not min maxy. So the thing about the fun trumps rules as long as the DM allows it is like, did you ever, when you were a kid, like the parents like have you play soccer, or t-ball, or something like that, and like somebody just like ran the bases and said I scored, and then you complained and said like that's not how the game works, and they said yeah, well, you guys are just kids, just having fun or whatever. That ruins the fun for me. I can't. It's no fun at all. So yeah, fun trumps rules, but like I can't have fun if we're throwing the rules out. Then there's no game here. I play lots of other RPG systems. Um, Vampire the Masquerade. I have played Mage. I have played Werewolf. I've played a lot of Wraith the Oblivion. I have not played Call of Cthulhu. I have played Fate. I ran Fate, actually. I ran Aberrant for a long time, if you're familiar with that one. Warhammer 40k RPG I've run a lot in, and I really like that game and system and everything. The only thing I don't like about it is the advancement. I feel like it's really weird that like player advancement is like on these really specific tracks. I feel like there's no reason for that, and that the game could have easily been developed with um, a freer advancement plan so that you can kind of choose like multi-classing or something. Um, I've never played Fiasco. Never played Monster of the Week. So I want to play Delta Green. That one sounds super interesting to me, and Paranoia sounds interesting to me as well. Delta Green, which is like an offshoot of Call of Cthulhu, if I remember, that sounded like a really interesting mechanic. I had a friend who ran a long running game of Hunter the Reckoning. I ran a long running game of Demon the Fallen. Um, I always thought Demon was an interesting setting. Delta Green is this very paranoid game where, after the events of Innsmouth, if you're familiar with the Cthulhu cycle, the government, FBI, created an agency to fight the stuff and then disbanded it. Or maybe they didn't. You don't know, because you've just been recruited by this guy who tells you he is a member of the now illegal disbanded group Delta Green, which was a special forces group designed to fight the Cthulhu monsters. But maybe they're not. Maybe they're just crazy people, and maybe none of this is real. Maybe you're just shooting innocent people in a mall for nothing. It's like Bleak. It's a lot like playing Hunter the Reckoning as the Fallen. River of London. Nope. What famous person died this decade? Who died this decade? Miss most. Somebody's death kind of bummed me out somewhat recently, but I don't remember who it was. Remember. A famous person. No. I'm not really put off by Bowie's passing at all. I know everybody's gonna say Bowie. It's funny, actually. I was working. That freelance job was across the street. It turned out from his house, so there was a huge shrine outside, and every day there was people out there dropping off flowers and stuff. I have a whole bunch of. I grabbed my rollie and went out there and took a bunch of pictures of the film of the Bowie shrine. Robin Williams, maybe. Yeah, maybe Robin Williams more than Bowie. I kind of felt like. So, I have no real emotional attachment to famous people that I don't know. I just don't. I'm sad for their families, but ultimately, like, everything I care about Bowie, he did in the 70s, the 80s, maybe. Certainly wasn't anymore, so I don't know. It's just like, didn't really affect me. His work exists. My relationship is always with his work. The fact that he's no longer on this planet was inevitable anyway. His no longer being on it does not affect me. It's awful to say. True. Your favorite rums. Carrie Fisher, yeah. Bummer. Smith and Cross, Eldorado 8, Plantation 5-year. Oh, and I actually think that Rum Barbancourt White is like super underrated. It's super interesting stuff. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sucks, but I don't know. I think of too many famous people's deaths that really affected me. Maybe Robin Williams. Stuart Scott. Who's Stuart Scott? Highlights of the decade: becoming a dad, getting married. Um, this show. Um, Kind of like, it's gonna sound weird, like hard to explain. Like realization of kind of myself. Like I became an editor in this decade and got out of editing in this decade. I think, yeah. Um, I carved out a career for myself and then a different one as well. So, I mean, that's, oh God, that's very lofty. That's extremely, like, hello, to toot my own horn. But, like, yeah, I feels cool. That's a highlight. Definitely not the same as, like, the first two there: kid, wife, family, that kind of stuff. Very, very important stuff. Um, about it. Yeah. Bruce Scott was an ESPN anchor. Oh, oh, oh. Not a sports guy, but I know he had the one droopy eye, right? Yeah, people were really busted up about that. No, I don't think anybody ever hated him. I actually always got a good vibe off of his like reporting too. Not that I didn't watch much of it, but he did some documentary stuff that I thought was cool. That I didn't know what I wanted to do until my 30s, and I didn't get good at it until my 40s. I think that's right, Andrew. Yeah, yeah. I still don't know what I want to do, but I mean, what I want to do is I'm gonna just like everybody else, right? Like what I want to do is nothing. Like I love doing this. This is great, but like I want to go sailing and be in tropical places and be on vacation and like grill some fish and watch beautiful sunsets and have and drink drinks. Um, and and I don't know if I'm even good at that. But like what I want to do professionally, yeah, I guess I'm doing it. I don't know. I'm doing parts of it at least. That's good advice though, Andrew. I like that. Predictions first 2020 celebrity. Betty White's got to be up. I mean, I don't know, man. Thank you, JCTX9. Maybe the Queen. The Queen. Unless she's a vampire. She's been kicking a long time. Very long lived in her family. Victoria lived like an incredibly long time too. Um, Queen. God save the Queen. It's the inbreeding. I mean, it's not the inbreeding, but maybe it is. I don't know. That's certainly counterintuitive. Only two more sips here. Yes, I get show fatigue all the goddamn time, and it's always like a job. Anybody who tells you that, people say like, God, I wish I could do what you do for a living. I'm like, yeah, I know, I get that, but like, and I've had jobs, so I'm not making light. Like, it's a better job, but it's a job. It's a job. I work as many hours on this, if not more, than I do doing anything else. Um, and and it's like I don't get like it's not like I wait. Oh, I had a good idea today. Let's go do that. It's not that kind of show. Like I have the idea I have on the schedule, and that's it. And sometimes they're great, and sometimes they're not. So I'm like, today's episode. Was it today? Yeah, today I released an episode. I'm not doing so good. They're terrible. Like, tanked. It's a bad idea. I had an idea like 2 months ago. I'm stuck with it because I'm on a schedule. So I don't know. It's like it's a job. I get fatigued. 2 episodes a week is a lot. It's a lot of editing. It's a ton of editing. God damn it! I wish I could edit faster. It takes like 14 to 20 hours of work to put an episode of How to Drink together after I shoot it. Sometimes quicker, sometimes longer. It kind of depends. So I do that twice a week, plus other things. Oh, thank you, Chris. Which movie? What people don't watch? What movie don't people watch? Well, thank you, JTCX. Is there a way to pronounce that? Um, I appreciate that. I know that I've got better ideas than others, though, and I know that I'm more, I strike closer to the heart of what the audience wants to see more often than others, right? So, oh, It's a Wonderful Life. Thank you. Yeah, it's a great movie. Well, actually, it's funny. I picked it because my research suggested it is, in fact, the most popular Christmas movie, but maybe not with the people on YouTube, which, although it's a huge audience, is an audience, right? It's not everybody. Thank you, Ellie. Oh, hi, Ellie. Ellie, you're the one who came up with the name H2D2, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm crossing my wires there. A lot of people were, if you've just shown up, a lot of people were saying it's a great name for a channel, so kudos to you, Ellie. Oh, Justin. Got it. I'd love to see you do a drinks competition, something like a World Cup of Drinks. Pisco Sour versus Irish coffee. And you That's so weird. I try to be so objective about what's good and bad, and just like lay to say that like this is better than that. And it's tough for me. It's tough. As a matter of fact, I was just a guest host on a show that will release in a few weeks, I guess, called Proof, and I had to pick someone to lose, and it was hard. It was hard. It's really hard to be like, this wasn't good. Yeah, that's the way to think about it. I prefer. I prefer. What does that matter? Hmm. Oh, that's a good call. Yeah, can I reward somebody with a VIP button? I don't know how to do that. I should let me see, figure that out. I don't know how to do that. And mod timeout messages and mod comments mod user do block report. And it's gamer. I don't know how to do it, man. So I thought too. I thought I could just click her name, but it doesn't come up with an option unless it's like hidden. No. Mod, timer out, banner. Don't want to do that. Add a friend. Created. If the sub, which for some reason is grayed out. Timeout messages. That's timeouts banned. Mod comments. I don't know. Block and report. Try it. Okay. Alright. I got it. It's giving me my own chat rules warning. Unable to add VIP. Why not? Why can't I do it? What the hell is going on there? How to do it though? Won't let me do it. Am I not logged in right or something? Access to VIPs? In the breakout window or something? Yeah. Let me do it for some reason. It's really fucking weird. Hmm. Hmm. I do have slots, I'm sure of that, but I just don't know. Yeah, it's just not working, Ellie. It says can't VIP. I don't know why it's not letting me do it. Totally a good idea though, guys. I don't know why I admitted to do. Yeah, it might be there. Two rolls anywhere. Oops, missing. Done. For some reason I couldn't do it in chat.
to bed now soon, very soon. Riot! I don't know why they're rioting, but... Nope, I don't really watch anime. I have nothing against it as a medium, but I'm not like... Yeah, I gotta get some new icons for things like that. Are you the reincarnation of Lord David Wolfsburg? Sure. Why not? I don't know who that guy is. Anime-inspired drinks. I do have an episode doing the drinks of Cowboy Bebop coming up soon. Sometime probably after January. Ellie, in my Discord, she's a patron. I asked what should I name the channel that I'm gonna put Twitch content to for VOD, and she named it H2D2. She named R2D2. You might be a tiny bit of a Bebop fan. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, so that's exactly right. You guys, I did so much research finding the 3 named drinks in Cowboy Bebop. Because I hadn't watched it since college, and like I had to like so many just fast forwarding through episodes trying to find those fucking drinks. It's funny. I didn't really revisit it. I revisited it a little bit because I was watching it for the research, and I was like, I really like this show, and now I think it's very angsty in a way that I can't relate to it. It's still great. It's a wonderful animation and everything like that. I went to college late, Andrew. But yeah, probably also true. You sound like you might be older than me. Yeah, I have a Discord for Patreons. And the videos. First time to Twitch channel, follow. You watch D&D stream and still missed it. How often do you play? It will be every other week, I think. But I'm working up to getting the ball rolling on that again. I have some tech issues I'm still sorting out. I'm kind of building a set, literally like a new room to shoot it in. But it will be every other week once we get that going. I stream as often as I can. I should be streaming probably. Pretty soon I'll be working up to like 2 or 3 scheduled streams a week, and then more when I can. Best save you've ever made without completely changing the recipe. God damn it. Tato, you got the hard questions, man. I'm drunk and tired. Best save I ever made without completely changing the recipe. That Ward 8, I think that was... I felt pretty proud about that because like I was really not happy with the way it came out. And then, I mean, it wasn't staged like on the fly. I did kind of decide like, oh yeah, this, and this will be better here. And it was. So I'll go with that. So B.A. Bowers, after all my friends kind of moved to the hinterlands, I realized that playing once a week was certainly not possible for our games. Playing every other week or once a month wasn't really going to be enough. But once a quarter, I figured all my guy friends, my nerd friends, could probably come over for a weekend. And we could do like a marathon session where we did like an entire campaign in like, 2 8-hour, 12-hour days. And so... so that's what we did for a while. We would run a game that I would like run for an entire weekend for like a slumber party, and do like a whole campaign arc, and we would just like level up as we went along and stuff like that. Oh, guys. Even though I took a giant Sudafed before I started this, so I'm wide awake.
I think that's actually what it means, potato, pretty much. It means the hinter over there. Kind of, some other place. My hair is looking really weird and fascisty. I'm not into that. Oh, that doesn't seem to help. I can't, does this look as ridiculous? Oh, maybe the angle on my monitor was. Oh, the picture's much, okay. Well, I wasn't around back then, Roll20. And also, I don't know. Playing D&D over the internet is like, it's not the same. It's not the same. It's not. I'm glad it works for a lot of people, but I couldn't get into it. HTD should GTB soon. I agree. Yeah, so I took a big Sudafed because I was congested, and now I'm wide awake. Because that's speed. It's 2:54, yeah, and I thought I was gonna stop for sure by 2:30. So I think we should call it quits. Oh no, I'd walk away from that, no problem. I've just been hanging out with you guys. You guys were hanging out. I'm hanging out. This is all good. You don't think quits should exist all-nighter? 24-hour stream. Some people do stuff like that. I mean, like some of like the people who are like streamers. It's crazy. Yeah, I would be playing Outer Worlds, except for the fact that all my equipment is up here and moving it back downstairs is a big job, and I don't want to do it. Take more minutes. Fuck you. Now the fire's behind glass. I'd be fine. Walk away from that. And now it's really just a couple of embers. I'm not sweating that at all. It's against rules. I'm not allowed to fall asleep on stream. That's like in the TOS. You can't stream yourself sleeping. Rail down Sudafed and play Fortnite. Nah. I played Fortnite for 5 seconds. It is extremely unworkable on an iMac, I found out. But also, like, I'm terrible at it. It's not my game. Not my game. Oh boy. Oh boy. Got a long day of editing tomorrow, guys. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming to hang out with me. I can't believe we read all the way through it. I was really worried it wasn't going to work out, but it worked out really well. This will... Oh god, top video game of the decade. I don't. What's that one I like? I like that a lot. RimWorld. RimWorld. RimWorld, top video game of the decade. RimWorld. This has been great. We read a book. You guys all enjoyed it. Maybe we'll do some more of this. Kato, I once was like you. Thank you for the defense, Ellie. GD Book Club is actually a great idea. I'm a sloth. Good night, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out and enjoying the book. And this will be up on VOD soon. I may cut out this extended rap session. Oh, I think I just hit stop. Maybe I didn't push it hard enough. Well, if I didn't push it hard enough, I'm going to push it again now. See you guys soon. See you Friday, hopefully. Or you'll see me Friday on my YouTube show.